From the TFNB Your Bank for Life studio. Now, it's time for the Smoak Show. Presented by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance. We are Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, your insurance provider built by Texans for Texans. And we've been protecting families in our great state since 1952. TFNB, your bank for life, serving Central Texans since 1889. It's time for the Smoak Show on 365 Sports with David Craig and Craig Smoak.
Smoak Show on 365 Sports. Craig Smoak flying solo today. That's right, a rare occasion where it is me and only me, although a couple of guests will be joining me along the way today over the course of the next 2+ hours or so. Hope you're having a good one. I am having a great one, despite some wildfire smoke kind of messing with my breathing and my mind a little bit last night. I'll maybe talk about that a little bit later. The folks in Texas and certainly parts of the rest of the country are familiar with how all of that goes, but kind of a new experience around these parts to have wildfires be as much of an issue as they've become lately. But beyond that, and hoping everything remains A-OK for all those being affected, feeling great today because, folks, we are right on the doorstep of college football season starting. A not quite full slate, but a healthy slate on Saturday. Some games that we will talk about. I'm in solo today because Smokey is off to cover the start of high school football season here in the state of Texas. The Midway Panthers, a program that he and I both covered for many years, me up until last year, are in action tonight, kicking off their 2026 regular season. So he's out doing that. And even though it's a Thursday, he's going to be out for most of the Fridays moving forward over the next couple of months or so as he attends to Midway football. But I'm going to have a co-host or two that'll join me from time to time. So this will be kind of the new normal, although not on Thursdays, but on Fridays. Garrett Ross was supposed to join me today, but things are kind of crazy with the start of high school football season. So good luck to him, all the teams, all the parents, cheerleaders, everybody that's traveling around and getting underway. I don't cover high school football the way that I used to, but I have a very soft spot in my heart for it, and I still enjoy going to games and all that. So best of luck to everybody out there in the state of Texas getting things underway. We got a lot to talk about today. And that includes some of the off the field. There's more developments when it comes to all of the events surrounding LSU and just eligibility in general. You've got LSU now looking like they're going to perhaps respond a certain type of way, which would be very interesting because of the situation it would create. We'll get into that a little bit. We've got the Saturday slate that we will talk about because I will not be here tomorrow. So this will be my last opportunity to talk about the schedule this weekend. And we've also got some scattered news that we'll get into here in the headline segment, along with a couple of guests today, is Mike Craven of Dave Campbell's Texas Football will be joining us here in about 40 minutes or so at around 3:40. And then Max Olson of ESPN.com will be with us as well at 4 o'clock. Have Off the Radar talking about some things off Well, you guessed it, the radar. Some NFL news to get into regarding the Pro Bowl or lack thereof moving forward and some other things as well. So busy show. Glad to have you with us. Please hit that like button and that subscribe button if you haven't already. And enjoy and take care of yourselves in chat. I got too many pans on the stove right now. I don't know how to police chat even when I don't have pans on the stove, much less a day like today. So I will entrust our longtime chatters to police yourselves and to have fun. And if there's anything I need to know, hit the super chat. Not because I'm asking for your money, but that'll be for an easier way for Rez to identify something that maybe we want to talk about or a question that you may have on the show today. So I don't want to start off on the legal. I want to start off on the football, and then we'll get to the legal. Let's start off with the fact that teams are arriving officially in Dublin, Ireland for this Saturday's game between TCU and North Carolina, the first game of the college football season. And here you have the Frogs making their way through the airport, looking like they're happy to be there, and with some touring to do and some events leading up to the game and some preparation still to go. But big smile there on the right as TCU has made their way to Dublin, Ireland for this game against North Carolina. And we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth, but really looking forward to this one. I mean, TCU, as steady Eddie of a program as I think you'll find pretty much around the country, a team that even when they dip, they don't dip real low. They're kind of a team that you just go 8-4 without even really deep diving because that's just kind of who they are. But a couple years ago, almost 4 years ago now, time flies, much better than just 8-4 playing for the national championship. But the past couple years since then, it's been just kind of so-so. They've made some changes. Gordon Samus now at OC, Jaden Craig at quarterback. Cannot wait to watch them lace it up on Saturday. And their opponents are also arriving. The North Carolina Tar Heels, led by head coach Bill Belichick. And no shortage of storylines surrounding North Carolina as they make their way. There you see Belichick in his sweats and security and his luggage making his way through the airport terminal there in Dublin, Ireland. And as Michael McQuaid says here, it is getting real, folks. We have live on-the-ground reporting of the Aer Lingus Classic coming up on Saturday. So both teams have officially arrived in Dublin. And I think it's a really interesting game for the reasons, like kind of the basic reasons I mentioned for TCU, just a new OC, a new quarterback that you've heard a lot about. But North Carolina, I mean, no shortage of coverage on their end as well. Not so much about Belichick and his relationship these last few months, more about the off the field and Mike Lombardi being on leave as they do a HR investigation into him and don't know really what to make of it. Much more than that, have not dove into the dirty details of what they may be looking at, and I'm not sure how much of that is even public. I just know it's another in a long line of events in a very short amount of a time where North Carolina has been in the news for the wrong reasons. So they can flip that on its head this weekend in a very easy, well, not so easy way, not so easy beating TCU, but in a major way they could flip the narrative immediately on its head with a win over TCU. And as it stands right now, TCU pretty heavy favorites, nearly double digits now, has not moved. I'm not a big Vegas this and that type of a guy, even though everybody seemingly is now because of sponsorships, but I do find lines and things like that interesting to look at, and TCU, as it stands, the line staying steady at 9.5 points. I am picking TCU to win this game, but 11 a.m. ESPN. And there you have it. North Carolina and TCU are over on the Emerald Isle and getting ready for their big showdown in a couple of days. And there is one note that was kind of out there and was a little bit of a question mark when it came to North Carolina, and that was the status of Steve Belichick. Not Bill Belichick. He's there, as you see, but Steve Belichick, son of Bill and defensive coordinator for the Tar Heels. Not expected, as Pete Nakos and Inside Carolina report here, and as you see on the screen, Steve Belichick not expected to be with the team to open the season on Saturday. He's had medical issues that were documented here recently, and On3 said in their report that they've been reaching out, trying to get a comment from North Carolina on kind of more of what's going on, and have not gotten any responses. Belichick kind of brushing it away when he was asked about it, so it's been very vague. He's been on indefinite leave for this medical reason for since August the 6th. Getting a little ahead of myself here. Since August the 6th, so we're looking at about 3 weeks that this has been ongoing, but not much has been said on the North Carolina side of things. Bill Belichick did say, we coach defense collectively as staff, and we will continue to do that. So no Steve Belichick this weekend for North Carolina. But again, that game coming up at 11 a.m. on Saturday, official kickoff to college football season. And I guess we've gotten into this pattern where there's all of these neutral site games to start the year and things of that nature, but it still feels kind of weird, even though we've seen this game and international games being played, to see this as the official start off to America's game, college football, and our first action is in Dublin, Ireland. But hell, it seems like a good time, seems like a heck of a fun trip I'd like to be a part of one day if my school was involved, and I'm sure the fans over there are loving it. Seen a lot of pictures from TCU media and just scattering of people who have made their way over, enjoying the alcohol offerings, enjoying the gift shops, and enjoying all that comes with going and touring a new place. So far, so good for the most part, and we will see how that goes. But TCU, definitely the favorites as it stands right now. Boots are on the ground, so it's nearly go time. Meanwhile, a couple of other pieces of news in regards to ticket sales, one for a game this weekend and what is one of the more enticing games on what's not a short list, but is not what the full meal deal will be next Saturday with the official start in week number 1. We got a healthy dose of college football coming our way, though, this weekend, starting at 11 a.m. in Ireland with TCU and North Carolina and going deep into the night. And that includes an ACC matchup as Virginia will be playing host to North Carolina State in Charlottesville. Conference matchup right out of the gates, and a pretty good game on paper. And they have announced that game is officially sold out in Charlottesville, Virginia, coming up this Saturday. And Virginia, a team with a lot of questions coming off of last year. I mean, Chandler Morris had an exceptional season, not Heisman Trophy worthy by any means, but had a really solid season, solid enough that he tried to come back like dozens of other guys tried to come back this past offseason, some to some level of success, as we'll talk about, some still trying to come back, as we've been talking about. But Virginia sold out, big conference game right out of the gates, and I think for Virginia, I'm really curious to see Bo Perbula as a starting quarterback. Interested to see if they go any deeper than that, but had a pretty nice thing going at Missouri. The awful injury, transfers this offseason. Missouri goes and picks up Austin Simmons, and so Perbula battling out in camp with Eli Holstein, who made his way over from Pittsburgh, and Perbula wins that job. So looking to see how he kind of follows up on what was a pretty good season last year at Missouri prior to it ending a bit abruptly, but went 7-3 as the starter in 2025, beats out Eli Holstein, and now takes over for Chandler Morris, who guided Virginia to arguably, I think it's the best season in school history. I've looked it up. I remember looking it up last year a couple times and never dug much further, but I think it's pretty safe to say it's one of, if not the best seasons in school history. So the bar set a little bit higher for Tony Elliott and company, but they will have a sold-out crowd on hand this Saturday, although I did see where, and boy, this just felt like, with all the stuff we've been talking about here lately, like it can get to be a little numbing when you're talking about legal cases, and that's why I've decided to start off today with just some regular football fun, and that led into, of course, it can't just be that Virginia sold out this game on their own. It was the fact that NC State bought up the majority of the tickets to hear the NC State fans tell the tale, of course. So this game, whoever wants to take credit for it, I think it's just a fun ACC game right out of the gates. It will be packed to the gills. That game coming up 2:30 on Saturday on ESPN, the third game on the docket. So you'll start off with TCU and North Carolina. We'll work our way into USC and San Jose State, and then we'll have NC State and Virginia. And here is the schedule. It's not in order by times. It's a little bit rearranged as far as that goes. But this is the full schedule, all 8 games that are coming up this Saturday. And while North Carolina and TCU will start things off, as I mentioned a couple times, it'll be perhaps the game of the week, Memphis and UNLV, which is situated there in the middle, but will actually be the nightcap, 9 o'clock kickoff on Fox between Memphis and UNLV, a very important game for the group of 6 and just positioning and all of that. Not trying to make too much of one game too early, but that is a very important game between the Rebels and the Tigers. So, Virginia and NC State, looking forward to that one. Game number 3 of 8 this Saturday. And meanwhile, a game not taking place this week, but soon after, Oklahoma State. Last couple years, have been quite forgettable, or they've been memorable for all of the wrong reasons. We know that's changed. They've not just got a fresh coat of paint, they've kind of torn down one room and rebuilt it, and everything's feeling good and new and fun again as Eric Morris takes over there in Stillwater. And I'm very curious to see what the fan response is, but no surprise to see this news that even though it's not this weekend, you got to wait a little while longer, but the game between Oklahoma State and Oregon in Stillwater coming up here in week number 2 is going to be sold out at T. Boone Pickens Stadium. Now, we remember what this game looked like last year. It was the death rattle of Mike Gundy. It was an absolute ass-whooping of the highest proportions, the type that Oregon levies on a far inferior opponent that's like borderline even in NCAA Division I, or maybe they barely have a pulse. They are clearly coming to collect a check. That's the kind of whooping that Oregon put on Oklahoma State last year. That's not supposed to happen to a team like Oklahoma State, regardless of where your fandom lies. It was brutal, and I expect a much different outcome, not necessarily the winner. I think Oregon will probably still win this game, but I do think the atmosphere will be a lot of fun. No surprise that it's sold out with all the anticipation with Eric Morris and what the Cowboys are going to look like here in year number 1 under him, and such a massive, cool opponent that'll be rolling in to town. So very much looking forward to seeing how the Cowboys just try to hang, quite frankly, with Oregon compared to what we saw a year ago. So that game is sold out, and that's going to be a lot of fun coming up here in a few days, September the 12th, so a couple of weeks from now. So week 2, technically, I believe, is that game between Oklahoma State and Oregon. So there you go, a couple of games sold out for this weekend and upcoming, and a little bit of an update on TCU and North Carolina. Meanwhile, before we dabble in the legal news, because the Big 12 did put out their statement, not yet, Rez, there was a little bit of news that just came down a second ago that I think is worth getting to first. It's not breaking news in the sense that, like, we got to talk about it now or else. It's just more interesting than dabbling back into the legal cesspool, and that is the news that just came down a few moments ago, and Brett McMurphy is where I saw it initially. But he puts out that BYU has announced that football coach Kalani Sitake will no longer report directly to AD Brian Santiago, but instead to a university vice president. Santiago will oversee BYU's remaining programs, and as Brett adds onto the end here, looks like Sitake won that one. Now, this has been brewing. There's clearly been something going on behind the scenes that was then brought in front of the scenes, and that's why last week, the week before, we discussed in a couple of different segments comments that Kalani Sitake had made. He made some of those same comments to us at Big 12 Media Days in early July, and then you fast forward a few weeks, and he's doing interviews in Provo, and he's doubling down and tripling down and saying things about the resources and saying that more work needs to be done, and really just saying things that let you know pretty clearly that he's not exactly getting everything that he wants, even though once he decided to stay at BYU rather than go and take another job this offseason like he very well could have done, and it looked like he was at one point going to do with Penn State, he decides to remain in Provo. He's a BYU lifer, at least most people think so, and then really doubled down and thought so when he decided to return and not take another job. Like, how much more of a BYU lifer you could be. But it does seem like the Cougars and their new AD, Brian Santiago, are playing with a little bit of fire here, to the point that you now have to put this out there. So I don't know. I have not watched any, really. I've seen tweets here and there from BYU fans and certain BYU media members based there in Provo. I've seen them kind of add on to what Sitake has said. I've seen them kind of push back on it being that big of a deal, but like clearly you can't say it's nothing. It's not a nothing burger because he keeps bringing it up. And really my question has been, like, what's the issue here? Like, what are you doing if you're Brian Santiago? He was nice enough to join us at Big 12 Media Days as well just a couple months ago. Really enjoyed meeting him and talking to him, and certainly BYU is in a really good place outside of this, as an athletic department and as a contender in the Big 12 in football this year. I mean, they're the second team off the tip of most people's tongues. So it's like, what could go wrong? And then all of a sudden this started rearing its head a couple of weeks ago again, where he's talking again. Why is he talking, and why does he need to be saying this again? What's the issue here? And now you have this come down, that Kalani Sitake will no longer report to Brian Santiago. So don't know where this goes. I do think it's a smart move by BYU to just calm things down and just make it to where, I guess, Kalani Sitake is happier in who he's having to go and talk to or who he's going to go and request things from. But I don't think it's a great look that your head football coach, who's not just some fly-by-night, who is the face of BYU football, who is the big win of the coaching carousel offseason as far as making sure guys stay put. I mean, can you imagine BYU without Kalani Sitake, especially after last year? Hard to imagine for me. But kind of had to start dabbling your brain in those waters a little bit and thinking about what that would look like if he was actually on the sidelines in Happy Valley, and who would BYU go and get. And they would have no shortage of alumni and various options that would line up and be happy to go and take that job. But this just seems like some really unforced self-errors on the part of leadership at BYU. And now I can understand that maybe it's a bit more complicated, but it doesn't seem all that complicated to me from the outside looking in, which is a much different view. But Sitake has publicly said that we need more. We need more investment in football. He got more money for his assistant coaches, and that's great. He said in the most recent interviews time and again that part of the reason why he did legitimately look around at not just Penn State, but various other places was to see how do they operate and what do they operate with. And he got a good idea of that, and he came back to BYU, and he said, hey, if we're going to do this, and if I'm going to stay here, this, that, and the other is what we need to do. And he got some of that, but he hasn't gotten all of that, as I guess was promised, and so it led to the recent comments and the doubling down and the tripling down over recruiting budgets and everything else that is needed. There's also been this simmering tension with what basketball gets and who's delivering more currently, football or basketball, and is there a little bit of favoritism from Santiago to the basketball side of things? I've seen that comment made more than a couple of times. So very interesting to see this come down, that Kalani Sitake will no longer report to AD Brian Santiago. It's not brand new to see that. It's not the first time we've ever seen that, but I don't think it necessarily is the healthiest thing in the world. And I do believe that while maybe this calms things down a little bit, this will be a situation to continue to monitor in Provo moving forward. So, curious as the show ends today and I get home and start looking over various comments and whatnot to see kind of what the reaction is to this. But certainly when I started reading that, I don't know about you guys, but when I started reading that, I thought that they were parting ways initially, like the way that tweet started off, and I thought, whoa, like the biggest bombshell of bombshells right on the doorstep of the season. Certainly this couldn't be the case, but BYU announces football coach Kalani Sitake will no longer, and that's where my eyes sort of stopped, and I was just like, oh my God. And then report directly to AD Brian Santiago. Felt the air leave my lungs and then quickly return once I realized, oh, this isn't great news, but it's certainly not the apocalyptic type of news of like the program's burning down in real time because now Kalani Sitake's leaving that I thought when reading the first words. But it's amazing, is it not, how things can be going so smoothly. And we've seen this now with arguably the Big 12's top 2 football contenders. If you want to say brands, that's probably accurate to some degree as well. And not so much really even the same thing, but Texas Tech's just flying along after last offseason. Sure, a little bit wounded with the Oregon loss and just how everything ended, but ultimately feeling great about where they are and where they're going. And you're like, how could anything disrupt this? And then you have the whole saga that occurred with Brendan Sorsby. And not to relitigate that or to get back into that, we've talked about it ad nauseum, but it's just like, man, that kind of derailed them for a second. Everything's just going on along quite smoothly, and then here's this that kind of is a disruption. Now, I think Tech, ultimately, by finally just kind of breaking free and going, we got to move on from this, was able to just get back on track. I don't think there will be any lingering effects when it comes to the football results this year or anything along those lines. I think that's a story that so long as everybody just kind of returns to their corners and agrees to be respectful of one another, then that story is pretty much in the back of the mind of most people. But then there's BYU, and you go, man, everything's going so well. What could possibly go wrong that would derail this? Well, here's something. Your head football coach not getting along to the point where he doesn't even report directly to your athletic director. So some infighting going on, but I will say good call on BYU's part because I'm taking Kalani Sitake 10 times out of 10 over the new athletic director, but we'll see kind of how that plays out, and I will make sure to dip into some of the BYU circles to see kind of what the reaction is to there as the day goes along here. Meanwhile, we've waited long enough to dip into the legal waters. I think this is a new record, Rez. I went 25 minutes without talking about a legal case. I feel like that's like the first time in about 20 shows where that's probably happened because there's been so much going on when it comes to the legal stuff. And I'm not going to dive deep into it right here either, but I do want to bring up the Big 12 and their statement that was released in the last 24 hours. We were waiting what they were going to say. Yesterday, the Big 10 comes out, makes it clear where they stand in light of the LSU story, even though there are other teams, as we'll probably dabble in a little bit later, that are attempting to bring players onto rosters. It's not LSU solely, but they are clearly the poster child now, and Lane Kiffin particularly, of this whole storyline that we're talking about here. And so it leads to the SEC basically releasing a vague statement that was kind of a placeholder, clearly, as they worked their way through exactly how they wanted to word everything and how they were going to move forward. And then the Big Ten came out and said, move out of the way. We got everything ready. Here's our statement. Here's what we're doing. Bing, bing, bang, boom. Here you go. And then a few hours later, the SEC, having had their discussions or whatever needed to be done, came out with their own statement, and both are on the same page. Very heavy penalties. We're not putting up with this chaos. Like, we're putting our foot down. And we knew that the rest of the conferences were probably going to follow, including the Big 12, and that is what happened yesterday, as the Big 12 has unanimously adopted a conference rule barring Big 12 member institutions from fielding professional athletes in any conference-sponsored sport. So that last few words, of that sentence there, pretty important because this isn't just football. This isn't just basketball. This is the Big 12 going ahead and saying we're throwing a blanket over everything. Any conference-sponsored sport, we're not fielding professional athletes. So what is the definition of a professional athlete? Well, they assumed correctly that most people would probably be wondering because there are different interpretations, and as we've seen with the SEC statement and the Big Ten statement, there's still some question marks that are left by the wording and what actually can be enforced and what not. But for the Big 12, here's how they define that. One, declared for the draft or supplemental draft of a professional sports league and did not timely withdraw before the draft. So pretty clear cut there. Timely withdrawal, I guess we'll see exactly what that means. But I think if somebody goes, like you often see with the NBA, especially the NBA, guy declares for the draft, waits and waits and waits to see what his draft stock looks like, go through some workouts, talk to some agents and some scouts, and then decides, all right, I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, I'm officially going in, I'm going to hire an agent, bing, that's the final decision, and I'm going to go into the draft. And then you can't, or you shouldn't be able to just turn around like many are attempting to do, where you can kind of do whatever you want to now, hence why you need to put things like this out there. In this case, you would not be able to do all of that and then say, nah, you know what, never mind. I'm not going to go to the draft after all. So timely withdrawal, need to see what exactly that means, but declaring for the draft of a professional sports league or supplemental is going to get you axed from being able to rejoin a Big 12 or join a Big 12 roster. Number 2, if you have been listed on the roster of a professional sports league, so this obviously would crisscross with some of what's going on now in regards to the NFL, LSU, etc. storyline that's been all the rage over these last few days. So this one, clear cut. Not everybody who's in a camp is listed on the roster, hence some of the names that we've been talking about this week, but there are those who are very much, you go check out the website and that name's on the roster. And if that's the case, then you are not going to be allowed to come to the Big 12 and play your respective sport. And this was something we were talking about yesterday with Trey Wallace, and we were asking him about, like, what's the next step with this whole LSU story? And there is follow-up on that we will get to later on in the show. But he said one of the things to be looking out for in determining where LSU might go with this is to see if they put some of the names that have been rumored to join them on their roster. Now, that's different from being on, like, the Dallas Cowboys roster, but that was the case with some of those guys. And so if you've been listed on a pro roster, you are not available to play. And then finally, 3, you signed a contract with any professional sports league to provide athletics services. I find that to provide athletic services, I don't know if that's specifically like you're particular about that wording, or if that's just kind of how the sentence needed to be wrapped up. Like, I don't know if there's anything to that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I just feel like with all the legal stuff, like, everybody's carefully choosing their words, which is why the SEC didn't just say, here's everything right away, here's our knee-jerk reaction. It was instead like, we're monitoring it, we're looking at it, we don't like it, we'll be back in a few hours, and then, okay, here are the exact details of how we feel about it that we've cross-checked with our lawyers. But if you sign a contract with any pro sports league to provide athletic services, you will not be allowed to play in the Big 12. This rule, it ends, will apply independently of the status of NCAA eligibility determinations. So I do think there is some careful wording in all of these statements, because you've already seen, especially coming out of Baton Rouge, a lot of picking at wording and bylaws and conference rules and what's allowed and what might not be allowed. So I think everybody's just trying to be smart and to protect themselves as best they can. And so I think that's probably why you're seeing that last comment of this rule will apply independently of the status of NCAA eligibility recommendations. And almost immediately saw people wondering, well, how does this affect international basketball players? How does this affect multi-sport athletes? How does this affect, I saw somebody say Australian punters are now screwed. That was in the comments, I think, under the Big 12's official statement. And is that all that true? I have no earthly idea at this point what is going to be allowed and what is not. I know that it appears as though LSU is perhaps preparing themselves to fight back based on some of the stuff being talked about this afternoon. And I just wonder, I don't wonder, but it's just kind of interesting to see after this offseason where one of the storylines became at one point, not that long ago, self-governance, even though that's been talked about for quite a while, but it really got back onto the front burner in light of media days and just more of the lawsuits, especially stuff like this where now Sankey or Petiti or Yormark or whoever having to come out and talk about this. And you have a guy like Greg Sankey, who for at least a couple of years now has been floating this idea of self-governance. Well, if the NCAA can't do it, we're going to have to break off and we're going to have to do our own thing. And we don't want to have to do it, but if they're not going to be able to handle their business, we're going to have to break off and do our own thing. And we're going to have to look into some other ways of doing things. And all along, my thing has been, that sounds good. so long as this is a breakaway to do your own rulemaking, that's one thing, even though I'd like everybody to have and play by the same rules. But my question has always been, are you going to be able to enforce these rules? Like, is LSU going to listen to you if you say, hey, LSU, you're not allowed to bring these players on the roster? The answer right now is no, the hell they're not going to listen to Greg Sankey. They're outright defying him in the fan base right now, which is not to be unexpected by any means. But the school itself, the governor of Louisiana, has come out in the last 24 hours and talked about this, and it's very clear whose side he's on, and he's a man with a lot of political influence, and Louisiana's history of politics is one for the ages. I'm just curious how messy this gets, but it is a good trial run to see. Leave that up for a second, Rez. Thank you. But it is a good trial run to see of what self-governance would actually look like. Because if Greg Sankey can't tell LSU what to do in this case, if for some reason they get the Louisiana lawsuit to work in their favor or the right judge or however this is going to go ultimately, that would seem to kind of defeat the whole idea that you could break off and do your own thing, wouldn't it? If Greg Sankey can't punish LSU, screw you can't do anything to us. We're going to take you to court. Well, I guess you'd have the option of punishing them, which would then lead to more lawsuits that they would not abide to until they were absolutely forced to. Or what's going to happen is we're going to see the idea of self-governance go away because it turns out you can't actually punish your own schools, even if you're the commissioner, even if you all agreed to this. Now, I've seen many people who have said, no, they've agreed to certain rules. This is different than this. You can't, as LSU, just thumb your nose at every single authority figure, especially when you've agreed to certain things. But this is going to get really, really interesting because it doesn't look like LSU will back down unless there's like a 23rd hour change of heart because they just see the writing on the wall and they don't want to take a big obvious loss. We are going to see the self-governance battle play out in real time and whether or not that is actually something that you can do. But all along, I've thought the biggest problem with that threat from Greg Sankey has been, so you're telling me the NCAA can't do anything and a lot of the state courts can't do anything, but they're all going to line up and listen to you when you tell them they can't have this competitive advantage. And no surprise, and I don't even mean this in a demeaning way, I just mean this in an obvious way. No surprise at LSU, they would have been a good bet to be the first to try to crack this nut and see what is allowed and what's not allowed and what they can get away with. There would have been other candidates that would have made sense too, but LSU, just with Kiffin at the helm, seems like, yep, that's about right of how this war would be waged. And so get your arms ready because it looks like there could be a war brewing, and it will definitely have a huge impact on how things move along moving forward. We'll get a little bit deeper into some of the other stuff, but here you do have the report from Matt Moscona, the 33 players involved in the Louisiana lawsuit not backing down after the SEC passed its new rule Wednesday. Now, some people pointed out the SEC's rule was not new, actually. But nevertheless, attorney Tony Clayton tells me he believes the conference is in violation of Louisiana law. I think Sankey ought to be forced to come down here in Louisiana court and explain to us how he can overrule Louisiana judge. Well, boy, you come down here, Louisiana, and tell us what to do. I cannot wait to see where this goes next because this is already brewing to be everything I thought something like this would look like. You've got Jeff Landry, the governor, talking trash. You've got Louisiana judges who they've made their feelings clear on where they stand on most matters, LSU. And are you really going to tell me that you're going to drag Sankey down to Louisiana or that he's going to be forced into Louisiana and that what Louisiana says is going to just trump everything else in every other state and every other decision? Now, this is not just an LSU thing, but because of stuff like this, it's very much front and center in Baton Rouge. So more on this a little bit later on, but we'll take our first break here. A lot going on today, a lot to talk about, and a lot to look forward to this weekend. We're going to get to our first guest, take a little break from the off the field, get back to the on the field, and talk with Mike Craven of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. TCU coming up against North Carolina this weekend. A lot of moving parts in the state of Texas, and we'll touch on a few of the most interesting notes with Mike Craven, Max Olson, ESPN to follow as well, and much more on all the happenings going around college football today. Thanks for being with us. Please hit that like button while you join us, and we'll be back with more. I'm Craig Smoak, and this is The Smoak Show on 365 Sports.
Broker is your Lennox Premier dealer. Right now, qualified buyers can make no payments and get no interest financing for 12 months on a new Lennox home comfort system. Conditions apply. Call Ray Broker Air Conditioning and Heating Specialists for details and a free estimate.
Make this the summer event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive a 2026 Ram 1500 Limited Crew Cab with your choice. 0% for 36 months or 25% off MSRP. See why it was named to Car and Driver's Best 10 Trucks and SUVs list. And it comes with America's Best Truck Powertrain Warranty. 10 years, 100,000 miles.
Come by, let's be friends.
Bold are the adventurous. Determined are the leaders. Faithful are the healers. At Baylor, you'll find your calling, your people, and your purpose. Dare to be you, indeed.
It's time to compete against yourself, finding too many excuses not to work out combined with bad eating habits, and Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness can help reach inside your competitive soul. Discipline, getting results you've only dreamed about, personal training, group exercise classes, and even a tanning bed, world-class tennis facility, and pickleball courts and lessons available. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, spacious, clean workout rooms, free weights, state-of-the-art technology, weight training equipment, and no intimidation. It's time for you to react today, not tomorrow, at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Serving Central Texas since 1889, TFNB Your Bank for Life takes pride in being more than a bank. TFNB, we remain committed to these principles. If you value them too, come join us. TFNB, your bank for life.
This 3 o'clock hour is brought to you by QC Kinetics. Feel better, move better, live better with regenerative medicine using your body's own healing abilities for natural pain relief. No surgery, no drugs, no downtime. With locations in Dallas and Houston at QCkinetics.com. It's time for the Smoak Show on 365 Sports with Craig Smoak and David Craig.
So 8 games coming up this weekend to kick off college football's regular season. Week 0, week 1, the floodgates open up and everybody's in action. But of the 8 games coming up this weekend to give us a nice, sizable, and hopefully satisfying appetizer, one team from the state of Texas in action, and that is TCU out in Ireland, as we talked about a little while ago, having arrived in the last few hours to take on North Carolina. And joining us to talk this game and all things Texas football is Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football. And Mike, appreciate you being with us as always. As somebody who, like me and Smokey and the rest, covering this sport year-round at this point, could you have waited another week, or were you about to just burst at the seams with all of the stuff that has nothing to do with football that's being talked about the last few, months, quite frankly?
Yeah, it is. I'm glad it is here for sure. So much of college football's offseason now is court cases and injunctions and Senate hearings and all the things none of us signed up for. We could have been politics reporters if we wanted to do that. But when the games finally come and the kickoff happens, it is amazing how that kind of slinks away and we get to concentrate on the football and the thing that we love. And, to me, it's the best 4 months of the year, and it gets started on Saturday.
Yeah, the only thing I kind of wish I would have gotten a law degree in covering this sport. I wish that was something I would have gone out and maybe dabbled a little bit. Feel like I would have been better prepared for a lot of the conversation. But nevertheless, TCU and North Carolina coming up, Mike, and this game's interesting on its own, but there is this story, and I don't think it'll have an effect on the field, but regarding the coverage of TCU, Stephen Johnson of the Star-Telegram reporting that was done on a locker room incident that led to a player's dismissal. TCU fans have been pushing back, saying that the reporting's untrue because it paints TCU in not a great light. And there's this whole pushback from the journalist side of things as well. You're a journalist. You've seen this kind of unfold. It won't affect the final score on Saturday, but your thoughts on kind of seeing how this has all gone in the last 24 hours or so?
Yeah, my opinion is just it's an unforced error. There are other ways to go about this and get your point across. If you are truly aggrieved, as TCU feels that it is, put out a statement, say why it is wrong, put your names on it. Sonny Dykes can say things, Mike Buddy can say things. Banning reporters never works out, and I'd imagine I'm not speaking out of turn when I say Steven's going to be allowed to cover sports at TCU again. And so it's just, you just never win the public relations battle. We kind of saw it at Texas Tech, right? Like you just sometimes shake your head at what these big universities with all this money they're spending. And it's like, you could have hired a PR firm to tell you how to do this. And so, banning reporters never tends to work out. You're never going to win the PR battle there. If there are criticisms and fair ones for the coverage that happened over that incident, then get out in front of it, put your names on it, say why it was wrong, and move on from there.
Yeah, no, Steven Johnson, I think, does an excellent job. I mean, that's not Fort Worth's a big town. It's one of the hottest towns in America right now, like Austin was for several years. But they don't get, you cover them, we cover them, but they don't get a lot of coverage. And I think he does an excellent job given the coverage they do get. I hope that clears itself up. But like you said, I think it's kind of amazing sometimes how really smart people who make a lot of money can make some just kind of questionable decisions from time to time. So as far as the game itself goes, TCU, I think the pretty obvious favorite here. Is there any part of what you know about them or about North Carolina that leaves you with any doubt that we're probably talking about a Frogs win on Saturday?
Well, the Ireland game's weird. And so there's always that part of it. We saw what happened to Florida State. The loser of this game typically kind of falls apart. And so it can get weird. It's week 0. It's the first time these teams have played. It's going to be a slick surface. You hear that there's going to be rain on Saturday in Ireland, which is probably not shocking if you know about kind of the climate there. And so, you turn the ball over. Also, North Carolina's got a new offense coordinator in Bobby Petrino, who knows a little bit about creating offense. And, again, you don't have any film on what they're going to do at North Carolina. So who knows? And maybe they score some quick points, and now TCU's playing from behind. So, new offensive coordinator for TCU, a quarterback who's never played FBS football at TCU. You're in Ireland. You're playing against a Hall of Fame coach in Bill Belichick and an excellent offensive coordinator in Bobby Petrino. And so I don't think it's impossible. This is college football. We've seen teams that are 9.5-point underdogs win plenty of football games. So I think there is a route to win if you're North Carolina. But the good thing for TCU is those routes to win are what you've concentrated on getting rid of all offseason. They turned the ball over too much the last couple of years. You go and you hire an offensive coordinator who is one of the best in the country at being efficient and not turning the ball over. So if you can avoid mistakes, I think TCU is too talented to lose the game.
What do you expect from Jaden Craig? The responses from Sonny Dykes when talking about him are always very positive, which I'd expect nothing less, but he talks about how he protects the football so well, what a smart guy he is, and he doesn't seem to think, and hell, Sonny Dykes knows more than most about quarterbacks, that there's going to be much of a transition challenge here, but who knows with the unique circumstances of this weekend. What does TCU look like this year compared to what we've seen the last couple of seasons with Josh Hoover at the helm and Kendall Browse running the show?
Well, they want to look more like 2022. And I don't think that team in 22 was given enough credit for how well they ran the football. They had a really good offensive line with a couple of future NFL offensive linemen there. Kendre Miller's a stud running back that ends up going to the NFL. But they had Max Duggan. And Max Duggan wasn't a superstar passer. He wasn't a future top 3 NFL draft pick. But he was tough. He could get you first downs with his legs. He could make all the throws that you needed to do. And I think that's what they see in Jaden Craig. He's a bigger quarterback than what Josh Hoover did. He's got a degree from Harvard. So, obviously a pretty smart guy. He can move around. He's not, I wouldn't call him a true dual threat quarterback, but on 3rd and 6, he gets out of the pocket. He can go get you on a first down. In the red zone on 3rd and goal from the 7-yard line, nothing there. He can put his head down and go run somebody over and get to the end zone. So I just think he needs to be good. He doesn't need to be great. And if they can eliminate the turnovers, if they can be better in the red zone, to me, tell me how good TCU is at rushing the passer and how good they are at running the ball. And I'll tell you how good TCU is going to be this year. I think Jaden Craig is going to be fine. It's what goes on around him that I think determines TCU's season.
And as far as rushing the passer, I think there's some prove it for Andy Avalos. Would you agree with that? As far as them needing to see a bit more on the defensive side of the ball, and I think they've been okay, but certainly an area where if they're going to be their best version, yeah, certainly they've got to kind of take a step up. Or I think Sonny Dykes maybe starts looking around a little bit on changes in the future, perhaps.
Yeah, it is more of a kind of bend but don't break defense. You're going to get yards 20 to 20, and it's about forcing field goals and being efficient on third down and creating some turnovers. But they need to make more plays. If we were bringing back the 2022 deal, that defense wasn't great down to down, but they came up with plays. They had a lot of sacks. They created turnovers. They were big in crunch time moments. And I think that's what TCU has lacked the last few years. I think they've been, sound defensively and an okay Big 12 defense, but they need more sacks. They need more TFLs. They need more turnovers. They need to be healthier. I think if you asked Avalos kind of what some of the issues over the last couple of years, they just have been banged up, and you hope you get better injury luck on that side of the ball. But, he's in year 3, and he's got a pretty talented roster with a solid rev share, and he's done some recruiting, and those guys are growing up. This is a big year for Avalos and that defense. They changed on the offense, and now we'll see if the defense is able to keep up as well.
Final thing about TCU, I know you do power ratings and you cover the entire state. It's pretty easy to say Texas Tech, Texas, they're kind of the head of the pack. I think that's obvious there. A&M not far behind, but what kind of a season do you expect from TCU? Where do they stack up in the big picture?
I think they can be a dark horse in the Big 12. There's always that kind of middle pack or team that we're not talking about too much that hits, and that could definitely be the Horned Frogs. I think they're a top 5 in rev share in the Big 12, so their roster, should be as talented as anybody not named Texas Tech. They get a lot of their tough games at home, so that's big in the Big 12 in a kind of a coin flip league in a lot of ways. They got an experienced quarterback. They got an experienced defensive coordinator. I think in this league, if you can go 9-3, 10-2, you got a real chance to play for a Big 12 championship. And you look at TC's schedule, and you can see a path to that if they're better at running the ball, if they're not turning the ball over as much, if their defense can make plays. There's not a lot of separation between like 6th in the Big 12 and 2nd in the Big 12. And so I don't see a reason TCU can't do that. What's held them back the last couple of years, because we kind of talk about TCU as a struggling football team the last couple of years. They won 9 games back-to-back years. The difference between going 8-4 in the regular season and going 10-2 in the regular season for TCU specifically the last couple of years has been like a loss to UCF or a loss to a Houston team that they shouldn't have in 2024. So if they can beat the teams that they should beat, hold serve at home, I think if Jaden Craig hits and this offensive coordinator is who they think they are, I think the Horned Frogs can be in the mix in November, and that's all you can ask for, I think.
Yeah, and the last couple of years there's been kind of this, especially noticed this offseason a little bit when he signed his extension, but Sonny Dykes being on the hot seat, I'm like, he won 13 games, and then they had the down year after that where they won 5 because they lost a ton of guys, Quentin Johnston and Trevius Hodges and Max Duggan, and then they won back-to-back 9, like you said. So, yeah, it is time there. 13 wins, 5 wins, 9 wins, 9 wins. How could you possibly be on the hot seat? Maybe at Ohio State or something, right? But yeah, pretty solid and pretty steady. One of the steadiest programs in the state of Texas. When you look at everybody that's going to get underway next week, and we look at this offseason where Tex had the great off-the-field gets in recruiting and also the other nonsense that they've been dealing with as far as the whole Sorsby saga, but all these big expectations. Texas with all the talent they have. A&M coming off trying to run it off of last year. SMU, I think, kind of gets lost in the equation. What is Mike Craven most interested about when it comes to the state of Texas, and what storylines you think will bear out this season?
Willie Fritz in Houston is atop of that list. They were 6-1 in one possession games last year. That's the most wins of any team in the country in one possession games. And so, I'm always fascinated with like the coin flip nature of college football. And is that a sign of a really good head coach and a experienced quarterback, et cetera, or is that just plain luck? And so, will Houston fall back to earth and be a 7-5, 8-4 football team, or can they really be a true contender with Connor Wegman at quarterback, Willie Fritz trying to do it at the P4 level when he's won everywhere else, especially in the state, like going back to like Blinn Junior College in the 90s. And so interested in that. SMU, it's kind of like gone from this Cinderella story to like, yeah, they're the second best team in the ACC. Like they're 14-2 over the last couple of years in the regular season in the ACC. Played for an ACC championship. Was a Cal loss away from doing it last year. Have one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country in Kevin Jennings. So, they don't play Miami. They don't play Clemson in the regular season. Like, can they find themselves back in Charlotte, playing for an ACC championship? But I think all eyes are on Lubbock, and not because they're playing anybody hard. Like they have maybe the easiest P4 schedule in the country, especially in the non-con. But a lot of times, like when drama, kind of the saga of the Brendan Sorsby thing happens in the offseason, there's two ways it's going to go, right? Like it's going to completely fall apart. They're going to lose a game or two early, and then the wheels are going to come off, or it's a rallying cry. And like, can Tech run the table, be 12-0, and kind of be the team, be the real bully in the Big 12? Because I think we've all kind of anointed Tech as this like new power in the Big 12, but they've done it once in their history, right? Like, can they do it again? Can they keep this on the tracks? They got the Paramount thing coming out, the documentary coming out. They've been in the news all year. They kind of, LSU and Tech seem to be in this kind of fight to see who can be like the most disliked kind of fan base or program in the country, fair or not. And so, I'm just interested to see what McGuire is able to do with that storyline. Can he use it for good, or does it become a distraction? And is it a distraction? And how healthy is Will Hammond, all that kind of stuff. So, I think Tech is going to be the team a lot of people like watch to root against. And that's a new place. It is different being the hunter than it is being the hunted. Tech is now in that spot. How do you handle it?
So you write about all of college football in Texas, and of course Texas and A&M will get the most of the attention among some others, but is that something you enjoy doing? Like, is it just part of the job where you kind of cover every part of the landscape? Or I would imagine it can sometimes be refreshing to go into the lower ranks and not be talking about lawsuits and transfer portals and all sorts of things. It's just college football at the end of the day. So like, what's that kind of dynamic like, especially how much the gap has created these massive differences from the top and the bottom of college football?
Yeah. Coaches like to complain. So even at the lower levels, you kind of you become like a therapist, especially around magazine season, right? When everybody's got a whole list of complaints. I enjoy it a lot. I think everybody thinks Texas and Texas A&M are kind of the bread and butter at Dave Campbell's. In a lot of ways they are, especially when we're just talking the magazine. But those two universities are so oversaturated in terms of media coverage, and they're so buttoned up and locked up in terms of access, right? If you're not, Pete Thamel or Chris Lowe or, some of those guys that, Ross Dellinger. And so, for me, I think you can kind of really make some hay with stories at Texas Tech and stories at Baylor and Texas State and, all the way down the line. We just did a profile on Prairie View A&M's head coach, Tremaine Jackson, who is, probably the most interesting coach in the state, at least the most vocal and easy to quote. And so I love the freedom. I enjoy telling the stories. A lot of times, by the time you're the head coach at A&M or Texas or whatever, like your story has been told. And so, everybody thinks we root for teams, but we really root for stories if you're like a true media member. And I enjoy the aspect of trying to get to be able to tell some of those stories that other people aren't telling or maybe haven't told yet because they're at quote unquote smaller schools or whatever.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask that because a couple days ago I was reading your non-FBS, the football landscape in the state of Texas from, I guess it was a few days ago, and just pointing out some of the teams like Tarleton State, who's been making a lot of waves here lately. And, just a lot of interesting stories, Prairie View, A&M, UTRGV. It's time, man. It's especially time here in the state of Texas. Keep up the good work, Mike. Thanks for joining us and giving us a few minutes of your time, and we'll definitely be in touch and enjoy this week 0 opening slate, man.
Of course. Appreciate you. Enjoy that couch on Saturday.
I will definitely do so. Thank you. There's Mike Craven of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, just riffing a bit on some of what we're looking at this weekend in terms of TCU and their matchup with North Carolina, which I think he brings up a very valid point about this isn't just a slam dunk for the Frogs. I mean, the Bobby Petrino wrinkle, I kind of forget about that sometimes in North Carolina when thinking about them, I get distracted maybe by too much of the Belichick stuff. But, yeah, Bobby Petrino now calling plays and running the show there in Chapel Hill. So, interesting challenge out of the gates for Sonny Dykes and Andy Avalos and that TCU defense to have to contend with. So, as he said, I mean, it is college football, so anything can happen. I feel pretty strongly about the Frogs winning, but We'll see. I mean, what a way that would be to start off the season. Everybody poo-pooing all over UNC and Bill Belichick. And what would make the most sense for college football chaos? How about they upset TCU in the opening game in Ireland? I would hate to see that for the Frogs, and it would not be a good look, I think, dominoes-wise for the conference, the Big 12 either. But, yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But I wanted to ask Mike as well about some of their other coverage because – yeah, you can get plenty of Texas and Texas A&M. You get plenty of Texas Tech and TCU and Baylor. But if you also like some of the small school stuff, there's plenty of programs around the state, and they're also being covered from Prairie View to UT Rio Grande Valley, Tarleton State, and all points in between. So shout out to the good folks like Mike over at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. And he is not our only guest today because we are also going to be joined by Max Olson of ESPN.com. We'll spread our wings a little bit, go a little bit more broad across the country, get his thoughts on some of these opening weekend matchups. Not sure how much he'll want to dabble in all the nonsense going on off the field, but as a guy who covers the transfer portal, or at one point did on a daily basis, curious what he thinks about some of the new eligibility challenges. So we'll dive into a little bit of all that coming up next with Max Olson of ESPN.com. This is The Smoke Show on 365 Sports.
It's in the major leagues for 24 years, and let me tell you, I can feel it in my joints. Shoulders, elbows, and knees. Trust me, pain doesn't retire when you do. I tried everything to get rid of the pain. Nothing worked until QC Kinetics.
Baseball legend Roger Clemens and other patients are getting lasting relief with QC Kinetics regenerative treatments. No surgery.
I trust QC Kinetics. You should too. Let's commit to getting rid of all the pain.
Schedule your free consultation today. QC Kinetics. Better starts here.
With over 25 years of excellence in IT, Carrion Solutions is your trusted technology partner. From managed IT services to cutting-edge cybersecurity, our expert team delivers tailored solutions that drive success. Our portfolio includes products such as Veeam, Bitdefender, Microsoft, Cisco, and Fortinet. Call David Carrion and his team of experts. Call 888-522-2221 or visit us at carrionsolutions.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Hello, I'm Camille Johnson with Camille Johnson Realtors. We specialize in selling residential real estate agent all across our community, and we love serving all types of families. We have been in business at Camille Johnson Realtors for almost 9 years, and I have been a residential real estate agent for almost 40 years. And we love our partnership with 365. So thank you for partnering with me, and thank you so much to all of my clients who have made our company a success.
Score big on your next ride during the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr.
Score your biggest savings of the year right now on Buick. Get a 3-row 2026 Buick Enclave and save $8,500. Or non-GM owners can save $6,750 on all 2026 Buick Envisions in stock. Get here now or go online and save thousands on Buick at Richard Carr.
Find championship savings and win on your next deal at their Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr.
At Richard Carr, we give you more.
Pepperoni Magnifico. Pepperoni Magnifico. Marco's Pepperoni Magnifico. Classic and crispy cut pepperoni, 3 melty cheeses, all on our fresh made dough. And starting at just $12.99 for a large, it's no wonder Marco's was named America's favorite pizza chain.
This 4 o'clock hour is brought to you by Stonewood Dental, your one-stop shop for your dental needs, specializing in teeth cleaning, fillings, crowns, sealants, root canals, IV sedation, extractions, implants, bridges, dentures, full mouth restorations, and bioaesthetic dentistry. Our priority is your comfort from the moment you walk through the front door. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas. It's time for the Smoke Show on 365 Sports with Craig Smoak and David Craig.
And Smokey will be back tomorrow, and he will be flying solo as I take tomorrow off to go attend a funeral, but he's out covering high school football tonight, so I'm flying solo today. But right now, I'm not alone because we are joined by Max Olson of ESPN.com, regular visitor and guest on the show, friend of the show. And Max, we do appreciate your time as always. And there are games that I want to talk about this weekend. I want to talk about Bo Pribula and all of that. But as a guy who covers the transfer portal, I have to ask of what the last few days have been like in regards to tracking lawsuits and players making their way back or attempting to make their way back into college football. I guess that's technically the transfer portal, right? So kind of with this fifth year and all that's come with these legal cases here recently, what's that been like from your perspective to cover and kind of wrap your head around?
Yeah, Craig, it's been an interesting week to say the least. I think that as soon as LSU picked up that commitment from Daquan Wright on, I believe on Sunday, you could tell this really kind of kicked into gear for everybody. And honestly, we talked about it a lot at the time, but like it reminds me a lot of, and I think it's in some ways an extension of the Sorsby drama, where I think you had a situation this summer where everybody's like, okay, we all agreed this is bad, this shouldn't happen, but what can we actually do about it? And the Big 12 was prepared to kind of take a stand there, and then that there was a ceasefire, but I think you kind of saw the Big Ten and then the SEC and these other leagues say like, okay, once again, we all agreed this is bad. It shouldn't happen. And I think in the case of those conferences, they knew it was about to get much worse because, we've got cuts in the NFL this weekend and you're going to have, more players who only played 4 years who, it makes sense if they can try to come back to college, they're going to try to. And so, I thought it was really interesting the way that these conferences moved quickly and were sort of like, all right, new rules, here they are. And obviously they expect more legal challenges to that. But I think there's also, Craig, if this had gone on in June, I think this would be a total bonanza right now, but we're kind of so close to the season. And I think that probably helps a little bit in terms of getting this thing calmed down. Now we'll see what LSU does. And I'm sure there'll be legal challenges to this from the, the folks who pursued these suits, but fascinating to see these conferences try to step up and actually put a stop to something.
Yeah, I mean, when they want to try and do something, they can do it, right? It's just that a lot of times they don't want to do it, and then that leads to the problems down the line. And I find it fascinating from the standpoint, I said this earlier in the show, of like Greg Sankey's talked about self-governance. Well, we're about to see how that works because they're trying to tell LSU what to do, and I don't know that LSU is going to listen. So this is going to get really interesting off the field, but you mentioned had this happened in June, it would probably be way more chaotic. How are you preparing for the potential of NFL cuts? Like, do you have a list of guys? Like, do you think there will be dozens saying, "Hey, I want my fifth year"? Like, how do you anticipate that will work? Actually,
well, I think similar to when they tried to get ahead of the ghost transfers thing, and anticipated that was going to be a problem, and it was going to be a problem. I think the fact that they've attached penalties to this, it's not just a prohibition, but it's, attaching financial penalty, head coach suspension penalty, stuff like that to this stuff. I think I could be wrong, but I think that will be an effective deterrent for most. And frankly, talking to GMs a few weeks ago, when this was first starting, I think a lot of them were like, look, we don't want to do this. Our head coach doesn't want to do this. Like, it's, if our opponents are, then it's something we got to look at. But I think a lot of people were probably a little bit relieved that now they have an official excuse to not pursue these players and not try to add late. And I think a lot of them are still in the position here of like, we don't have roster spots. We don't have all this extra money. Like, how exactly we're supposed to do this? But I think LSU pushing it like they did, obviously led to other programs saying, all right, well, we got to be competitive for these players that do get cleared to pop in the portal or in the opportunity of guys who we could bring back into our program who were with us last year. So, I do think we will see like the Indiana defensive linemen. I think we'll see some of those guys file lawsuits and try to clear the way to get back. I think this story will still go on past the start of the season for some, but it's I know clearly the conferences wanted to at least put a stop to, we cannot let these guys that went through training camp and are getting cut, we cannot let them back into college football. And I'm sure some of them will attempt to, but clearly they're trying to at least block that off, and then they'll deal with the rest.
Now, these somewhat late additions haven't been just this NFL battle. There's also the fifth year, right, that's been going on. The NCAA opened themselves up for, although the guys part of that lawsuit it's like a couple dozen. So it's not like there's pure pandemonium and there's hundreds of players that are out there. But we have seen some commitments, including Thomas Castellanos from Boston College committing to Texas Tech this week to provide extra depth behind Will Hammond. What are your thoughts on that pickup for Texas Tech, and how do you think it betters them in that quarterback room?
Yeah, you've got that very narrow group of players who only played 4 years, never redshirted, went undrafted, and then didn't get picked up by anybody who do have a chance to, come back if they get a TRO. And I think in the case of Castellanos, I think it's kind of a no-brainer for Texas Tech from the standpoint of having a guy with 32 career starts between his time at Florida State and Boston College come in and support Will Hammond and back him up. And I think I've seen some sort of trolling tweets this week from Big 12 fans being like, "Oh, everyone said Hammond was good. Why would they be taking him? I guess he's going to be the starter." And that's obviously not real. But I think that Texas Tech is also in this situation just as they were last year, and they went through it all year long with Baron Morton and his injuries. All right, we spent a ton of money on this team. If we get QB wrong, then it's a waste of money. Then we messed this up. And so I think that they're trying to, have extra insurance for the possibility that Will Hammond has a setback or isn't the same player after this ACL. I think he will be. I think he'll be really productive, and I think this offense is going to be really impressive. But man, it's a good one for Texas. I don't know that they really need him at wide receiver. I think when you talk to Texas Tech players, they feel like they're incredibly deep at receiver, deeper than they've been anytime under Joey McGuire. And so I think they feel good about the playmakers there, but certainly in terms of a guy that can, run the ball in short yardage situations, I think that's an exciting piece for Texas Tech, because I do think less designed run for Will Hammond this year, as good as he was in it last year. I think they probably want to protect him and try to get him through the full season. And so, I think there's going to be some wrinkles here for their new QB who, man, Craig, I don't even know when he's getting there or when he's actually, getting into practice and getting a jersey and all that. But I imagine they will, they'll be putting him out there sooner than later.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's nothing but a positive potentially. I mean, he's additive to that quarterback room, and you're right. They can do some interesting things with him, and certainly they got some guys who are creative offensively that I'm sure licking their chops to have another option there to throw at defenses. So you wrote an article that was really great. I enjoyed it on Bo Perbula and his journey and him now being there in Charlottesville with the Virginia Cavaliers, who open up this weekend at home against NC State, beat out Eli Holstein, another transfer for that starting quarterback job, had the bad injury last year at Mizzou, and then comes back maybe too early, and then they go get Austin Simmons. But what did you learn about Bo Perbula, and just kind of take us into writing this story and the story you were trying to tell?
Yeah, one of the craziest portal stories I've ever heard in covering this since it started, and you can see it playing out a little bit when the portal was open in January, that Bo Perbula was going on a bunch of visits, and it was really unclear kind of what the right fit was going to be. But got a chance to talk with him and his agent here earlier this month about just what that process actually looked like, and it's a pretty wild one. They they thought they were going to Virginia Tech. They had it all lined up to go visit right after the portal opened, and were in agreement on a deal and all that. And then they get there for the official visit and find out that Ethan Grunkmeyer had just committed to Virginia Tech while they were still in Blacksburg. So from that point, they are scrambling to set visits and find somewhere to go. And it's as you see this stuff play out, and especially in a 2-week portal window, and only one chance to get this right. Those commitments really fly off the shelf really quickly, and it puts you in a tough spot. So Bo Perbula flew to Nebraska and was in meetings with them, and they told him, "Hey, sorry, we just took a commitment from Anthony Calandria." Then he goes out to Washington because they're afraid they're about to lose Damon Williams, and then they work things out with Damon Williams. He goes to Georgia Tech, and then he goes to Tennessee because they have no clue what they're doing at QB, and then eventually Virginia. And he went on 6 visits in 8 days, and really ended up in a great spot when you think about a team that just played for the ACC title, maybe could have snuck into the playoff if they'd won that ACC title game. And so, I think it's going to be a cool story for him, especially when they play Virginia Tech here at the end of the year. But I think it goes to show it's not just about man, what a crazy deal for him, but this is kind of what it looks like now, Craig, for these guys that go in the portal. They're not all Brendan Sorsby's and Sam Levitts who get to kind of do whatever they want to do. You have to really, you got to have a good agent. You got to have a good plan. You got to have a little bit of luck in terms of finding a good spot. And that's why it's kind of why these guys kind of line this stuff up pre-portal, because once you get into it and, schools start dropping off the list, it can get pretty stressful.
Now, there's an idea for a reality show, Max. Is a borderline QB get in the portal like Bo Perbula, who, as you point out, 6 official visits, 6,000 plus miles, 8 days, multiple schools, hey, sorry, we just picked up this guy. You wasted your time coming here. There's a reality show for Netflix, is a quarterback trying to find his next school.
Yeah, Paramount could probably do a 4-part series on the portal experience. Yeah, that tech one looks good, by the way. But it's a crazy deal. And I think Bo Perbula is a guy that, like, even though he was an SEC starter and played, I think he went 7-3 as a starter at Missouri. Like, didn't have a terrible year, but Missouri felt like they had they wanted to go upgrade and went and brought in Austin Simmons from Ole Miss. And I think for a lot of these guys, like, it's not what people expect. It's not like Missouri puts out a press release and says, hey, we're not going to give Bo Perbula an offer to come back or whatever. Everyone kind of just assumes that these kids are making moves all the time just on their whims and stuff. But there's a big business to this now. And, you've got to find the right school. You got to find the right deal. And, his is a recruitment that crossed paths with, as I said, Anthony Calandria and Aiden Childs and all these other guys. And so, you got a lot of dudes kind of fighting over the same spots here in a short period of time when it opens up.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I know you've written about Chandler Morris, and congratulations on the honors by the FWAA, by the way. I know that was a couple of weeks ago, but cool to see that. And, Chandler Morris did a great job there last year. I mean, that was the best season in school history. Here they are, and we've got football to talk about, Max, because Bo Perbula will be playing this weekend. He will be starting for Virginia at home in Charlottesville against C.J. Bailey and NC State, an ACC game right out of the gates here. But, how good does it feel to just be here and know that here in a couple days we're going to be watching games and everything else will kind of at least drown out for a few hours?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Craig, I didn't know. I was doing ACC Network on Tuesday night and to talk about, the NFL players coming back to college, stuff like that. And the person who was on right before me was Dave Doran talking about this game. And I was like, oh, wow, this week's that game. That's awesome. Like, I just didn't, I know we've got a couple of good ones here for week 0, but and certainly excited to see Jaden Craig against North Carolina and what we got coming up here. But yeah, it's already here. It's already time for all this. And man, it's been such a long off season dealing with all sorts of non-football stuff, off the field stuff. And it's a relief to kind of finally be here and, hopefully enjoy it. I think that's going to be a great game. Got a chance to meet C.J. Bailey at Manning Camp this summer. I think he's a pretty impressive dude and one that I think he's going to have a chance to have a great year too. So, always like it when the conferences have like a legit matchup to open the year like that. So give me fun to watch.
Yeah, they announced a little while ago it's sold out, which is not a real surprise. And of course, this being the part of college football that we love, NC State fans rushed into the comments to say, well, that's because we bought all the tickets. That wasn't Virginia fans. That's because we bought all the tickets. But can't wait to see that game. I intentionally asked this kind of vague question to everybody, especially those who cover nationally, because there's just so many things that are of interest or fascinating. But if you can kind of whittle it down to a couple things, what are you most looking forward to finding out here over the next few months as the season gets underway?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think that, we did a piece this week, the top 100 preseason top 100 players on ESPN.com. And, that you could say like at the top of the list, obviously Jeremiah Smith and Leonard Moore and Colin Simmons, like pretty easy to do. But you do that exercise and it kind of reminds you like, man, we're just sort of guessing here because so much changes so quickly in the sport. And I was going back and looking at it, Greg. Last year, our end of season top 100 had 72 guys who were not on the preseason list. Oh, wow. And it might be a sign that we're bad at this, but it's also, I think, is a reflection of just how quickly the sport can change in the season. And obviously Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey and Fernando Mendoza and these guys were not on that radar, right, at this time last year. And Malachi Tony, no one was talking about him at this point. Like, there's just so many guys that come in and take this thing over. And that's what's so fun about it. It's not just the new players, the freshmen and the transfers and all that, but certainly what we've seen with Seg and Indiana now, you sort of feel like, man, there's going to be a lot of programs that we're not talking about enough right now who are about to go on a run, and we're going to say, oh, I didn't see that coming. And so that's where I get excited, is you spend all these months kind of talking about the same players and the same programs, and everybody's preseason brackets all kind of look the same, with mild variations. And I look forward to hear when it's like an Oklahoma State or UCLA or some of these teams that have really flipped their rosters, who's going to come out and be really hot, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about them. So that's the fun for me, especially from the portal window to now. It's just like kind of who are the breakout teams, the breakout guys. We're going to find out here very quickly, and that's one of the things I love about the sport.
Say, man, there's just, the coaching changes, the roster changes, how the money has factored in to create an Indiana situation or a Texas Tech. Like, I'm with you. Like, who the hell knows? It's fun to kind of predict, but it's almost impossible to predict accurately outside of saying, yeah, Ohio State's going to be good, but I don't know if they're going to win the national, like that kind of thing. It's right. Going to be, for all we know, North Carolina could win on Saturday. And what the hell would that look like after all the talk about Belichick and Lombardi and all of that? But it's like Mike Craven pointed out to me. I was asking him, like, TCU's like 10-point favorites, which doesn't mean everything. But what do you think? He's like, well, hell, UNC's got Bobby Petrino calling plays now. Like, it's in Ireland. There's, who the heck knows? And it's like, you know what? We're back. We're back in college football.
100%.
Yes,
100%.
Awesome.
And I think that Jaden Craig, he might be this year's Trinidad Chambliss, or maybe we've just like completely overhyped him, and it's going to be a brutal season for TCU. It usually is for whoever loses that game in Ireland, as we saw last year with K-State. But man, you're totally right. I know Sonny Dykes is taking the Bobby Petrino of it all very seriously, because you just assume even if the roster doesn't look great on paper, they're going to be better and tough to play. But yeah, no, I'm excited to, we just have all these built up beliefs and consensuses at this point. And then right away, I remember a couple of years ago, wasn't it Florida State, Georgia Tech, I want to say, was our week 0 game. And that was the beginning of the decline for Florida State, I think. Notre Dame starts 0-2 last year. Like, it's the narrative's gonna change real quick here. Yeah,
we thought FSU was awesome, and then we quickly found out, like, oh no, actually that was actually kind of a mirage. So it's always a crapshoot with Ireland, especially. Hey Max, thanks for being so generous with your time as always. Enjoyed your piece on Bo Perbula. People should go check that out. Also, you mentioned the player rankings over on ESPN.com as well. So plenty to digest here in the next couple of days before kickoff in Dublin. But hey, have a great weekend, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. There's Max Olson of ESPN.com joining us to talk about just a variety of different things. And it really does sound like a great reality show. If you were to take like the tippy top of the quarterback prospects, you could still have a pretty good one. Because if you remember with, before the whole to-do with the gambling part of it, but like, there was those moving pieces, and kind of you could see where teams were trying to. LSU was like in on Sorsby, but there was Levitt, and obviously they were trying to get gosh dang it, missing Washington's quarterback DeMond Williams. They were trying to get him initially there at LSU, and that turned into the whole to-do about him then having to retract, and Washington showing us that they have ironclad contracts in the Big Ten to the point where he backtracked and stayed at Washington, and we'll see if that's temporarily for this year. But the dominoes is what I'm getting at, and you can just look at a school like LSU and say, like, man, if you could just put the cameras on Lane Kiffin navigating the transfer portal and specifically the quarterbacks. And here's this DeMond Williams situation. Now, that one, you probably couldn't have shown everything on Netflix because you would have had to start it a bit earlier than they were supposed to be talking, right? So you would have had to have done some editing or something along those lines. But, then when that falls through, how do you pivot? Like, who was mentioned first? Do we go Sorsby, go Levitt? Do we go who else? And that would be fascinating to see, because it was fascinating to kind of read about the bits and pieces we did get, much less see what that really looked like. What does the war board look like, or the war room look like? Like almost like the NFL draft when you're figuring out, hey, I'm taking over this program and I need to go get a new quarterback. I think that would be really interesting on the program side of things. But also, Bo Perbula showing up, plane trip after plane trip, car ride after car ride, trying to find your next place to play college football. And what seems like 4 trips in a row or 5 trips in a row, you read Max's piece and get the real details. But you show up, and you weren't uninvited necessarily. Like there's a purpose to all of this. Everybody's looking for a quarterback. They're interested in you. Come check us out. But because of the way things are, like you keep showing up, and it's like showing up for a date, and the date's you get to the front porch, and she's like, "Oh, sorry, Cliff already showed up." Oh, well, damn it. So you go back on the dating app, and then you show up the next day and like, sorry, I'm dating Rick now. And it just sounds like complete craziness, almost like a weird dating game, trying to find your next quarterback, your D tackle or what have you. And you're competing with all these others to get the best of the best. So from a player perspective, I think it would also be really interesting and I'm sure like you could have some Academy Award winning dramatic type moments if you're sitting there with cameras on Bo Perbula, who's at school 4, that has just told him, sorry, we already filled your spot. We're moving on, and you should too. All right, who do I call now? Who's next on the line? It'd be some good drama. Probably would never happen because it would expose too much behind the scenes that people do not want to be exposed, especially stuff like Damon Williams and all that. But it would be fascinating television. It would definitely be good reality TV. And I'm not even a big reality TV fan, but I would be popcorn in hand for the quarterback carousel presented by Netflix. So good stuff there for Max. Always enjoy talking to him. And I think everybody, you can almost sense it when I ask about the on the field of just like, like all these other things melt away, as fascinating as those can be at times as well. Just to think like we are here and we're going to get Virginia, NC State. We're going to get TCU, North Carolina, and we'll go down the full list of all 8 games a little bit later on. But it is a fun place to be. So we'll come back with more. Still got a little bit of a ways to go in the show. If you got a question or a comment and you want me to talk about it on air, I encourage you to use the Super Chat, not because I'm asking for your money, but because that's the way to alert me when we got a pretty sparse setting today with people out for various reasons. That's the way to alert me and Rez to the fact that you've got a question. So if you want to pop into the Super Chat, ask me anything, then we can get to that. But otherwise, we do have some more off the field to just kind of peel back the layers on LSU's latest response in regards to what's ongoing with player eligibility and what they're attempting to do, bringing guys back from the NFL, and just a lot of stuff going on with that whole story still, despite all of the statements from conferences. Are we setting up for a big showdown? Are we going to see if self-governance is actually really possible? Are we going to see what kind of teeth or how sharp the teeth are of a commissioner like Greg Sankey? And what do the other schools do about it? They clearly voted a very particular way yesterday. It was 16-0 and included LSU, and then a later vote, it's 15-0 because LSU decides to not take part in the vote, probably on the advice of a legal counsel, because it's probably something that could work against them if they decide to fight some legal battles. But if you're the SEC and you've got this 15-0 vote, and it's similar in just a conference versus specific school, like with the Big 12 and Texas Tech, although the story itself is different, they made it pretty clear. But is Ole Miss going to abide by that as well? Or is a Kentucky trying to slide a player through? Like, is everybody truly on board? And are they all fully on board with actually laying down the hammer if need be? And what would that hammer look like? We saw some of the penalties that were rolled out yesterday, and they do look pretty steep, even for a team and a program and a university like LSU. So we'll dabble a bit more in that, including the LSU side of things. And we will get into week 0 and much more, including potentially your Super Chats. But either way, appreciate you being along for the ride. I'm Craig Smoak, got Rez producing, and we've got more coming your way. This is 365 Sports.
90 years ago, Bert Cogen Ford made a commitment, not just to sell Fords, but to serve Waco. What began in 1936 wasn't a transaction. It was a partnership built through hard work, quality, and integrity, mile by mile. For over 4 generations, Bert Cogen has been driven by Waco. Thank you for the road we've traveled together and the miles that lay ahead.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide. also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
When you play hard, sometimes you fall hard. Sports injuries require special treatment. At Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, our team of expert doctors provides athletes and active adults with comprehensive sports medicine care, diagnostics. Whether you're in high school, college, or beyond, we'll help you get back on the field. Call on the team physicians for Baylor Athletics. Call Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics.
I pitched in the major leagues for 24 years, and let me tell you, I can feel it in my joints. Shoulders, elbows, and knees. Trust me, pain doesn't retire when you do. I tried everything to get rid of the pain. Nothing worked until QC Kinetics.
Baseball legend Roger Clemens and other patients are getting lasting relief with QC Kinetics regenerative treatments. No surgery.
I trust QC Kinetics. You should too. Let's commit to getting rid of all the pain.
Schedule your free consultation today. QC Kinetics. Better starts here.
I get those goosebumps every time. I need that. Throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps every time.
From the TFNB Your Bank for Life studio. Now, it's time for the Smoak Show. Presented by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance. We are Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, your insurance provider built by Texans for Texans, and we've been protecting families in our great state since 1952. TFNB, your bank for life, serving Central Texans since 1889. It's time for the Smoak Show on 365 Sports with David Craig and Craig Smoak.
Craig Smoak here with you today, flying solo, as I will be doing for the most part on Fridays for the next 3 months or so as high school football gets underway in the state of Texas. Those Friday night lights and Smokey covering high school football for, gosh, I saw him put it on Twitter earlier today. It's like year 45. I gave him another 10 years. Year 45 of covering high school football for Smokey. I had a good decade plus up until last year, and last year was the first time I had not done any high school football coverage in 20 years or so. Started doing it when I was still in high school, doing sidelines for my alma mater, what was Tyler Lee, Robert E. Lee High School in Tyler, and is now Tyler Legacy. But did that, got to cover a state championship, my sister's graduation year. And sometimes, especially I got a football stadium, a local high school that's got their place not too far away from me, close enough to where tomorrow night when I get home, I'll be able to hear the band playing and I'll see the stadium lights from my back porch. And I just love this time of year. Love high school football, even though I don't still cover it. So Smokey out doing that. Year 45. In this one, another year with the Midway Panthers. As they take on Rouse tonight, 6:30 for those in the area, 106.7 FM. But good luck to them. Good luck to everybody kickstarting the season off tonight, and also a bunch of games coming up tomorrow as well. And I hope everybody's going to be okay. I have not looked into, but I am curious about how the Ross fire here in the state of Texas might affect some high school football, because I got to tell you, I was at home last night, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going to get into a return to talking about BYU and the Kalani Sitake story here in a second, as well as some LSU time permitting as well. But I got to say, because this was unique to me last night, we don't, at least in this particular area of Texas, not really accustomed to dealing with wildfires all that often. Like, that's a California thing. That's a West Coast thing. That's occasionally a somewhere else thing. Droughts, yeah, we're used to that. No rain, of course. But dealing with, like, direct wildfires, we're fortunately still many miles away from this growing Ross fire in Texas, but that did not prevent it from having an impact on last night, because I'm sitting there at one point, I'm like, man, it's kind of foggy in my place, and it kind of smells weird, and I don't know, something doesn't feel right, like just that human intuition of like something slightly off, and I wasn't thinking about it at all. Then I go walk out on my back porch, and I realize I can't take a breather out here. It's way worse. There's smoke everywhere. Not like billowing or anything, but just this haze that made the night sky look really weird. You could smell the smoke in the air, and just awful stuff. And this is pretty well removed, not like crazy like on another continent or anything, but we're several miles away from the Ross fire. But the wind direction can change things in a hurry, and so last night, a weird experience with the scene outside. So all that to say, I don't know how that's affecting games up in that area when it comes to high school football. That's the least of anybody's concerns, obviously. I just hope everybody's okay, and I hope they can get a handle on it sooner rather than later, because I know that a lot of people are losing their homes. They're losing land, and I just hope they're not losing too much more than that. But it is a scary thing, and something that I guess has been more common the last couple of years in the state of Texas. So just T's and P's to everybody out there who is being more directly affected. Fortunate to be able to kind of just complain about the air for a night. Can't imagine being any closer or being more affected by it. So my sympathy and my best wishes for everybody out there dealing with that. Not just this one, but in general. Scary stuff and not fun at all. Meanwhile, earlier today, we talked about a story that came across right as we were going on air involving the BYU Cougars, and I want to return to it because this seems like a pretty big deal. I'm not one that likes to make too much out of nothing. There's stories that I find interesting and maybe talk about because I just find them interesting, not because I just want to bleed them dry or anything. So I was fascinated by the whole saga involving Texas Tech this past summer. I'm really interested in this LSU versus the world battle and where this takes us. But this story is supremely interesting. And initially I saw kind of some scuttlebutt, and I thought, oh, well, Kalani Sitake's kind of been saying some things, and he's still at BYU. Everything seems fine. And then he starts talking again, and you're like, okay, well, I understood when he first was looking at Penn State and apparently other jobs as well, as he has documented himself in many interviews over the last few months. And then ultimately decided after a big push by BYU to stick with his alma mater and the place he's basically always known. I knew that when he came out and he talked about needing more money for the roster and for his assistant coaches and things like that, some of which got done, that, you know, that's just kind of part of the deal. But didn't think twice about there ever being an issue once the Penn State bow was wrapped up and tied. So then it's all about BYU and this excellent team they're expecting to have coming back, this sturdiness at the top now that Kalani Sitake has told multiple major programs, no, I'm staying where I am. It should be all smooth sailing. He should get whatever he wants. It's probably what he agreed to stick around, right? I mean, as much as you love a place, if this other place offering 10 times as much money, and it's also a pretty great place too, it's just not home, it can become home pretty quickly. So he decides to come back to BYU, and then there's a little bit of chirping, kind of not long after that, about the resources and kind of where they were being divvied out to and what that looked like. And initially I didn't take it for much. It's just like, oh, I guess they haven't gotten around to meeting every demand or are writing every single check that they promised. He's mentioned that the assistant coaches have been taken care of, and that was a big priority, but there was still clearly some things that were not quite to his liking. It's like, okay, noted, but don't think anything of it. Then a few weeks go by, and all of a sudden you see like another mention of it, just random interview, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know how that's still possibly a thing. Like, you would think that they would have tied up any loose ends and given him everything that he wanted and agreed to, and you move on and you start to go try to win a Big 12 title. And they're doing that regardless of what the contract or the promises or whatever look like. But okay, still don't think too much of it. It's just kind of weird we're talking about it again a few months later. Then as we're getting around to media days, we get Kalani Sitake on the show, and he's just going full in on not like anything disparaging, and that's not his style, is to go on radio and like demean anybody or talk bad about anybody. That would be so out of character that it would be like jarring and be kind of scary. Like, do we need to call somebody to make sure you're okay? That's not how you are. So that's not how he was. But it was very clear in talking to Kalani Sitake of like, yeah, he's not quite happy with the way things currently are, despite the fact that he agreed to come back and in doing so agreed to the various things that would help his program. So weird that now I'm hearing about it again, and we're sitting across the table from the guy telling us pretty much about it in the most polite way that you possibly can. So now I'm starting to take a little more interest and go like, okay, this is getting weird now, like that this is still a thing. Go home from Arlington, and I don't know, it was like a day or two later, sometime within the next week, here's Kalani Sitake. He's doing an interview with BYU media, and he's going a little bit further with it. And that's when I'm like, okay, like he's smart enough and calculated enough that he's not just talking about this because it's a minor gripe. This is clearly a thing. This is clearly an issue. And then you see the kind of reaction from some of the BYU media, boots on ground in Provo, and you realize, like, no, there is something to this. And then you start reading about, like, this new athletic director. And I had read some things about Brian Santiago. I know not everybody was totally on board with him. He was a nice enough guy when we met him at media days, like good enough to come over and sit with us, appreciate BYU for allowing that access, and nothing bad to say as far as that goes. But I know he wasn't unanimously well-received as the new athletic director. But just started to wonder, like, does this dude love playing with fire or something? Like, what are we even doing here? Why is Kalani Sitake on, like, the third or fourth interview that I've heard in the last few months still talking about the same issue that seems like it would be pretty easy to nip in the bud? And then you read more about the resources and how they're divvied up and the concentration on basketball, and you start to read the articles or just the comments by BYU fans or people who know the university well, perhaps nobody more than Utah fans, and vice versa, that are talking about how it's like, yes, there's this, that, and the other. It's kind of strange. And you hear people make comments about BYU football having accomplished a lot more than BYU basketball has to this point. And so it's just like there's just something that won't go away. And then you get this news today. And this from Brett McMurphy, as it's been sitting up on the set here for a while now. But BYU announcing football coach Kalani Sitake will no longer report directly to AD Brian Santiago, who just basically took this job, but instead to a university vice president. Santiago will oversee BYU's remaining programs. Looks like Sitake won that one. Brett, obviously, with some commentary. Yes, because clearly there's not a great relationship there. And that's perhaps been quite obvious, but just talking to not so much everybody following this on a daily basis, but just for folks in general who maybe haven't heard of there being an issue up until this point, this has been brewing. And this is not just something you go like, oh, that's not a big deal. Actually, like, Santiago's just really, really cool with the other coaches, and he and Sitake kind of need to know each other. No, this is notable that your athletic director and your football coach appeared to be at odds. They appeared to be at odds over whatever it was that Sitake had agreed to, in part to remain at BYU. And I don't know why BYU, and I'm not like placing blame, I'm just talking out loud and I'm wondering here, I don't know why BYU has allowed this to become such a thing. Like, that's the curious part to me, is why not just nip it in the bud and take care of it and make your football coach happy and just focus on the football? But instead, here he is doing interviews multiple times, multiple outlets, multiple states, multiple events, and we're coming back to the same point of where he's clearly not all the way happy. And that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So now you see this news, and it makes more sense, but I don't think it's good news by any means. And so I don't know where this goes from here. Again, Brian Santiago, new to the position. Sataki, the face of BYU athletics in most every way. And a guy who has been true to that university, has been around a very long time, loves the school, alma mater, like all that stuff. Nobody is a better ambassador or representative. And he also, on top of that, is a damn good football coach who wins a lot of games. And they, in the last couple of years, have had a really good run. This just seems like, I guess it's somewhat intentional on the part of those making decisions, but it just seems like, you're stepping on a nail, and you could have avoided it, but you saw it, and you said, you know what, I'm going to take my shoe off first, and then I'm going to go really plant my foot on there. That's kind of what this feels like from the outside looking in. And I don't think it will have an effect on BYU football and whether or not they win any games this year or not. I think they're going to win probably double-digit games again. I have them playing for the Big 12 championship. I actually, in my official prediction, have them winning the Big 12 championship, finally getting over the hump of Texas Tech. And I just wanted to kind of have a little bit of a different choice. Everybody's Texas Tech, Texas Tech, Texas Tech. I think Tech's going to be great, and I think they'll still be in the playoff. But just for kind of a fun wrinkle, I thought that'd be a hell of an interesting way to end the season. Both teams get in the playoff, like that type of a scenario. I think that's all still on board, and this in no way affects that opinion whatsoever. I think BYU football as a team will be locked in, but very curious of what this looks like, this particular relationship looks like moving forward. And yes, it looks like Sataki won, but yeah, I know there's been instances where there have been relationships like this and that head coach and AD don't always get along, but this is notable, and this is something to certainly monitor. And, I am looking forward, as I said a little while ago, to kind of perusing the BYU message boards and seeing, like, what the reaction to this is. And I don't feel like I'm overblowing things here. I think it is quite notable that this move is being made. So there you have it. Sataki will report to a university vice president, and then everybody else, every other coach and every other program, basketball, men's and women's, obviously, every single program. Soccer will be reporting to Brian Santiago. So very interesting how that is now being set up and how that will work moving forward. But, for all of the good mojo and momentum and everything you're carrying into this season, it's weird how sometimes things can slip in, although this isn't out of nowhere. As I mentioned earlier, this has been kind of building for a little while. So looking forward to watching the Cougars this season, and now very intrigued by the behind-the-scenes drama that could be developing as well, although I do think Kalani Sitake will be able to probably handle that pretty professionally and keep that from becoming something that leaks into the BYU football story in 2026, especially with such a promising team returning. We'll take a break right here. We'll come back. Got some off the radar. Got to talk a little Pro Bowl, big announcement from the NFL, and a couple of other things to take a little bit of a break from college football. Thanks for being along for the ride. Thanks for joining us. Give me your thoughts on the YouTube page or on Twitter, watching along however you are. We do love you and do thank you for being along for the ride, especially this week 0, knowing we got games right around the corner, and we will touch on the full weekend before the show wraps up here in a little while. So stay tuned for all that. This is the Smoak Show on 365 Sports.
90 years ago, Bird Culture Ford made a commitment, not just to sell Fords, but to serve Waco. What began in 1936 wasn't a transaction, it was a partnership built through hard work, quality, and integrity. Mile by mile, for over 4 generations, Bird Culture has been driven by Waco. Thank you for the road we've traveled together and the miles that lay ahead.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
When you play hard, sometimes you fall hard. Sports injuries require special treatment. At Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, our team of expert doctors provides athletes and active adults with comprehensive sports medicine care, diagnostics. Whether you're in high school, college, or beyond, we'll help you get back on the field. Call on the team physicians for Baylor Athletics. Call Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics.
I pitched in the major leagues for 24 years, and let me tell you, I can feel it in my joints. Shoulders, elbows, and knees. Trust me, pain doesn't retire when you do. I tried everything to get rid of the pain. Nothing worked until QC Kinetics.
Baseball legend Roger Clemens and other patients are getting lasting relief with QC Kinetics regenerative treatments. No surgery.
I trust QC Kinetics. You should too. Let's commit to getting rid of all the pain.
Schedule your free consultation today. QC Kinetics. Better starts here.
I get those goosebumps every time. I need time. Throw that to the side. I get those goosebumps
every time. It's time for Craig Smoak's Off the Radar.
Welcome back into 365 Sports, the Smoak Show. Craig Smoak riding solo. Tomorrow, Smokey will be riding solo. He'll be back from high school football, and I will be off to a funeral. So, gotta get down the schedule before I head on out of here today. But we are getting a little bit lower on time, so a little bit of non-college football news is what I was gunning for here. But I will add that the ACC has now officially joined the remainder of the power conferences who have released statements talking about passing resolutions to ban professional athletes. In the last hour, while we were talking with Max Olson and just kind of talking about BYU here, this story came down. The ACC passing a resolution banning professionals from returning to college in football, plus men's and women's basketball. So we've seen that kind of spread from just beyond football. And in doing so, according to Adria Adelson on ESPN, joining the other P4 conferences, the resolution includes players who had previously declared for the NFL, NBA, or WNBA drafts and did not withdraw before the draft. So no going undrafted and trying to come back. I think that's a good particular note to have in there. Players who signed with another or signed with the NFL or another pro football league would be banned. NBA G League or WNBA, same thing, banned. Any player listed on any roster for an NFL or other pro league, NBA G League or WNBA team. So across the board, similar to, if not outright the same to what others have done. The statement, as ACC said, the board's action reflects the ACC's commitment to preserving college sports as an opportunity for college students that is clearly distinct from professional sports, protecting opportunities for current and future student athletes, and promoting competitive equity. So everybody's on board now as far as the Power Four conferences go. Now that the ACC is officially throwing their statement out there. And you've had coaches like Andrea in her article does bring up what Manny Diaz said. He said he was in favor of the ACC setting forth rules that would not allow players who sign pro contracts to return to college. Said, I don't blame the players. I don't blame the individual schools because no one's breaking a rule. But if something doesn't pass the smell test, then why don't the grown-ups in the room be the grown-ups in the room? And let's just say that's not something that we stand for. And for as many quotes and comments that have come out the last few days where there's a lot of coaches who are kind of like hedging their bets because they probably think it's gross and don't really want to do it, but at the same time, it's win at all costs, and it's winning above all else for the most part. And so you got to at least leave the door open, because what if that one really, really good player that can make a difference for you might find his way there? At the same time, what are you risking cutting off just for a couple dozen players in football this particular offseason? When it comes to the 5-year, specifically a different thing from the LSU situation. But, like, I think just there's so many things going on that it can get confusing. And as coaches, you got to be sort of vague sometimes. But there with Manny Diaz, I do like that he acknowledged it's not the players' fault. I don't blame the players. I don't blame the players either. I blame the situation, and that was a situation that was created by the NCAA and to a lesser extent by the schools, because they compose the NCAA, but even the schools are not necessarily the ones to point the finger at directly, although plenty of fingers being pointed at LSU as they take it a step further than most have so far. So there you go. The ACC, as expected, has now dropped their statement, and they are joining the other P4 conferences in banning former pro players. Meanwhile, a story that's been talked about for quite a while, and this is certainly off the radar. It's a game that still, because of the power of the NFL, people watch in droves and watch more than most other events, even though it's an event that's not meant really anything outside of the individual honors for each players for several years now, and that is the NFL's Pro Bowl, which has undergone reconstruction and a lot of different ideas being thrown around as to how you can make it better. Let's move locations. Let's make it a non-game. Let's make it flag football. Let's do this. Let's do that. What can we do to try to make this thing more popular? Well, the NFL has finally thrown their hands up, because not even the NFL turns everything to gold. They typically have the Midas touch, but the one thing that they could not seem to figure out, and no one quite could, was the dilemma of the pointless all-star game. And does the risk outweigh the reward? Does the interest outweigh the reward? Well, the NFL has decided there's not a solution to make this any better than it is, and we don't really love it the way that it is, and the players aren't all that into it. Like, they love being named Pro Bowlers, but they're not really trying to play in this game, whatever version of it is. We doing sand beach flag football. We doing flag football on grass. We doing a regular game. Well, we're doing nothing now, as the NFL has eliminated the Pro Bowl and will replace it with a pure selection honor for 88 players starting with this upcoming season. So we've seen the format shift, but there will be exactly 88 players named. And so this will also eliminate the guys who got those injury Pro Bowl honors because they had to come and fill in a spot because Peyton Manning was, or not even that, the Super Bowl spots where the Colts are playing in the Super Bowl. Peyton Manning can't play in the Pro Bowl, so some guy gets voted to be a Pro Bowler to fill his spot. It will be just the 88, no alternates. The league has already made that very clear. There's no need to replace anybody because you're not playing a game, and they also want to keep the honor, it says in some of the write-ups, as a true honor, to have it be a thing of prestige and not so much what it kind of became when you had a lot of people bailing out and guys who didn't quite frankly deserve it. They were kind of on the cusp of it, all of a sudden can have Pro Bowl on their resumes. So the NFL getting rid of the Pro Bowl, and I mean, it's 75 years of history with this game. I can't say I'm going to even notice if I hadn't seen the headline, to be just straightforward about it, because it's not something that I've personally watched really a minute of in several years now. It's, as much as I love football and as much as I love other sports, the All-Star game in general, I don't know how it is for every league, but the NBA All-Star game is not at all what I remember growing up. Now, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. And so everything in 1991 and 1993 and 97 and, well, throughout the 90s was better than it is now in my child mind. But it did seem like it meant more a little bit back then, and maybe I was just young and didn't know any better. But as I've gotten older, if you eliminated all the All-Star games and just gave guys honors, I don't think outside of baseball it would bother me that much. And outside of baseball, so long as you still have the home run derby, I think that's about all I care about when it comes to that as well. As much as I do like seeing the guys from different teams on the field and all of that, it's been pretty clear for a while now the Pro Bowl was pretty unnecessary and just more of an additive than anything. And so the NFL is, in fact, eliminating the Pro Bowl, which is interesting. So no more talk about that, and you'll still be able to get your honors and be a 10-time Pro Bowler like Patrick Mahomes will eventually be. You just won't get the alternate spot like Shedeur Sanders got last year, for example. Speaking of the NFL, meanwhile, later on tonight, you got Pittsburgh at Buffalo, a 4-game slate of preseason games because this is off the radar after all. Pittsburgh at Buffalo at 6 o'clock on NFL Network. You've got the Patriots at the Cleveland Browns tonight, 7 o'clock on Prime Video. Noticing a pattern here. San Francisco at Las Vegas, Niners and Raiders. That ought to be... in Vegas especially, that ought to be quite the atmosphere. I mean, it's always a big deal with the Raiders being in Vegas now that they just have this home field that everybody wants to come to because they want to go gamble and see the shows and drink and party and whatever in Vegas. But with the Bay Area history of those two teams, be like a really crazy family reunion of two families that don't quite get along up there in the desert. But that game... Raiders and Niners, 7 o'clock on ESPN Unlimited. And then Battle of Los Angeles, you've got the Chargers and the Rams, 9 o'clock on NFL Network. So if you're trying to watch any of the preseason games tonight, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea, and kind of like the Pro Bowl, you may not feel like you need to watch any of it, but you do have to have NFL Network, and you do have to have Prime Video. And now you also have to have ESPN Unlimited, which is why I chuckled a second ago, because I'm realizing I think I have NFL Network. I don't currently have Prime Video, and I know I don't have ESPN Unlimited, although I've been weighing the odds or the cost of getting that. It does have a lot to offer, I guess, with football season coming up, but just remember when it's like on ABC? Remember it's on regular ESPN, and now it's NFL Network, ESPN Unlimited, Prime Video. The streamers have really suckered us over these last few years, and it's just staring me in the face right now. But that is coming your way later on tonight, that quartet of games. And I think I'm going to leave it right there because we are starting to get a little bit short on time. And there's more coming up this weekend. There's an 8-game slate in college football. We've talked a little bit about some of it, but I would like to go over that one more time as we get ready to bid adieu on this Thursday. So we'll take our final break. We'll come back. We'll get back to college football. That was a little bit of off the radar. And we'll look at the 8 games, just kind of riff on those a little bit, and whatever else to tie the show up today. Rez, behind the scenes, I'm Craig Smoak. Thanks for watching. This is The Smoak Show on 365 Sports. More to come.
It's time to compete against yourself, finding too many excuses not to work out combined with bad eating habits, and Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness can help reach inside your competitive soul. Discipline, getting results you've only dreamed about, personal training, group exercise classes, and even a tanning bed, world-class tennis facility, and pickleball courts and lessons available. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, spacious, clean workout rooms, free weights, state-of-the-art technology, weight training equipment, and no intimidation. It's time for you to react today, not tomorrow, at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Make this the summer event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get summer ready in a new Jeep Wrangler Sport. Your choice, 0% for 36 months or just $33,848. Want more truck and more fun? Check out the 2026 Jeep Gladiator Mojave. Your choice, 0% for 36 months or save $10,000. Take the top off and hit the road. Allen Samuels Jeep.
Come by, let's be friends.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
This 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson and Brad Wilson in Waco, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe, with an individualized approach to addressing your financial needs, including education, savings, planning for retirement, and protection strategies. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, making sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. It's time for the Smoak Show on 365 Sports with Craig Smoak and David Smoak.
Hope you're having a great day. Smokey back tomorrow, and we got about 20 or so minutes left in the show. Just enough time to take a look at the games coming up this weekend, as I won't be here tomorrow to do so. So I want to make it a point to try and just at least gloss over some of what's going on, although I could definitely talk for a while longer on the BYU Kalani Sitake situation. I know that's been developing for weeks now. As I pointed out, been comments made for months on end now, but just really interesting that this is bubbling up in the way that it is, to where he's going to be reporting to somebody else on the eve of college football season starting up. And also just looking forward to how this LSU situation resolves itself. I think I'm going to try to go like the least legal on this show that we have in a while. Like, I don't even want to really dip back into the LSU stuff. I'll just kind of summarize what I saw earlier today from people like Matt Moscona, who covers LSU very closely. And he basically let it be known that LSU is, circling the wagon, so to speak, and they are looking into fighting this thing and trying to, I guess, get their way ultimately in the end. But Matt Moscona saying earlier, the 33 players involved in the Louisiana lawsuit not backing down after the SEC passed its new rule Wednesday. Now, I know they don't speak all for LSU. That's not all LSU guys, but that's where the story eventually winds its way back around to where most people are fixated on it. But attorney Tony Clayton telling Matt Moscona he believes the conference is in violation of Louisiana law. So now we've had all these state law cases, and, well, Georgia feels this way, and Pennsylvania feels that way, and California thinks this way, and that's as big a part of the problem as anything. Not to mention just not only the separate states and the separate interpretations, but then within said states, very biased judges in some cases, maybe not biased judges in other cases, but certainly there's a lot of rah-rah going on when it comes to making some of these decisions. We had that conversation with Trinidad Chambliss, the Ole Miss alum judge, who was borderline or basically crying as he read the decision. And there's been others where it hasn't gone that way. It's so, like everything else, kind of unpredictable. And I do think what LSU ultimately does here and how this all resolves itself is very unpredictable at the moment as well. It could be one of those things where by Monday, the Tigers say, this isn't worth it. We're just going to move on. Let the players handle the lawsuits, although with the season starting this weekend and the full schedule getting underway next weekend, what does that look like with multiple players trying to find their way back? But to hear an attorney say, I think Sankey ought to be forced to come down here in Louisiana court and explain to us how he can overrule a Louisiana judge, well, that is a place that feels like they are above the law. And history says that I'm not talking out of turn there. That's absolutely how some people in Louisiana feel, especially the attorneys and the politicians. So, I want to see you do that, Tony Clayton. I want to see you go grab Greg Sankey by the collar and drag him on down to Louisiana. Not that you said you would do that physically, but I want to see you guys get him down there and tell him what's what and how he can't tell Louisiana what to do. And I want to see that, not to see you lose, because I don't know what the hell is going to happen at this point. I want to see that because I just want to see the can of worms that opens up and explodes in every direction if we decide to go down that pathway. So Ross Dellinger had a follow-up and said more comments in responding to Matt Moscona's article about this. One saying what Sankey has done is a complete violation of state law. So you've got comments like that. And it's going to be fascinating to see where all of that goes. So couple of really interesting stories continuing to circulate with Kalani Sitake, BYU, and the latest there, and also with the eligibility fights ongoing, particularly in Baton Rouge, although that's not the only place where it's ongoing. So enough of the off the field, and we really haven't done a ton of that today for our typical stakes, but part of the reason why we've done that a lot in the last few months is, one, because they have a massive effect on, like, who's on your roster. When we're talking about LSU, like, does this guy have eligibility, or do they have a new D lineman, or how does all of this work? So we kind of had to work our way through all of that to just sort of know what's what. And all of that is worth it to just get to the point of where we are right now. And that's the actual season. And that starts on Saturday with an 8-game slate, and just kind of want to go over those one by one for a moment and just soak in the fact that we are going to be seeing real-life football coming up this Saturday, because after all, along with the pageantry certainly carries a heavy, heavy weight, but the on-the-field action, the wins and the losses, and what all of that then leads to off the field, the pageantry that leads to on and off the field. That's why I'm a college football fan. And so very much looking forward to this weekend. And it all starts off in Ireland, 11 o'clock on ESPN, TCU and North Carolina. And the games on screen here, this is not in order time-wise, but these are the 8 games coming up this weekend. I'll lay them out in order of kickoff times here. But North Carolina TCU is the first game on the docket out in Dublin, and TCU looks like, and I'm not a big line guy, but it does look like the lines dropped like a point in the last couple of hours since I last looked. 8.5-point favorites are TCU, and this isn't brought to you by anybody. But TCU, I would say, is the pretty consistent and pretty unanimous favorite here. But as some have pointed out, I mean, who the hell knows with Bobby Petrino calling plays for the Tar Heels and Billy Edwards Jr. at quarterback, and plenty of unknowns with just North Carolina in general, and TCU with their same unknowns. Not a lot of drama. It's kind of a weird off-the-field dramatic story involving the local newspaper, but shouldn't have an effect on the game. Jaden Craig will, though. New offensive coordinator Gordon Samus will certainly have an effect on the game. So a couple of new OCs here, new quarterbacks, same head coaches, and back in Ireland, so looking forward to this one. The second game on tap this weekend will be at 2 o'clock on NBC. USC, number 14 team in the country to start things off with, against San Jose State. The Spartans losing a lot through the transfer portal. Walker Egan, the quarterback, now at Duke. You got Danny Scudero off at Colorado, really good wide receiver, among others. I think this will be all Trojans, and the folks who do dabble in gambling seem to think so as well. Nearly 40-point favorites are the USC Trojans and Lincoln Riley. So I'd expect something pretty lopsided and one-sided, but USC, a very interesting team entering this season, and certainly a lot of pressure on Lincoln Riley's shoulders to not just win, but to win substantially, to win and win things along the way that matter, not just a set number of games, but show that you are not just winning, you are among the best teams that are out there in the Big Ten and beyond. Virginia, NC State, a game we talked about a couple times already in the show today, 2:30 on ESPN, so you'll have North Carolina TCU on tap first, and then just about as that's wrapping up, USC will kick off from L.A., and somewhere in like the late first quarter, early second quarter, depending on commercial timeouts, you'll have Virginia, NC State kicking off. ACC matchup right out of the gates in Charlottesville. You've got Bo Pribula starting for the Cavaliers, taking over for what was a very successful run under Chandler Morris and best year in school history last year. And, CJ Bailey and the Wolfpack coming in, feeling good about themselves. Virginia slight favorites in that game. CBS Sports Network, after the early window sort of wrapping up, will start to get into the mid-afternoon. It'll be North Dakota State making their big FBS Mountain West Conference debut, and they are at home at the Fargo Dome welcoming in a team that knows a thing or two about moving along and also not being necessarily a team that's right on top of mind, but certainly is capable of putting on an entertaining product. I think this is going to be a really fun atmosphere and a really interesting game. North Dakota State hosting Jacksonville State from Fargo on Saturday afternoon. Eastern Michigan, Sacramento State making the big move up in affiliation as well. So you will have them at 5:30 on ESPN+. Eastern Michigan, nearly double-digit favorites at this point when I last look. And I mentioned the odds, and I don't do it because we're brought to you by any outlet. I mean, if we were, I'm sure we would probably go that route. I know you get hammered over the head with it, and for a lot of people, that's great because you do dabble. But for me, I just mention it not because of some affiliation, but more so because I find it interesting to kind of see what Vegas thinks, and then afterwards see how close they were or how wrong they were. So in this case, Eastern Michigan, pretty substantially favored. Not substantially, not compared to USC San Jose State or to FSU, as we'll get to, but nearly double-digit favorites. Hawaii, Stanford, 6 o'clock ACC network. Cardinal with new head coach Tavita Pritchard coming in, giving that a makeover after the transition year last year. Andrew Luck working his magic behind the scenes and the sidelines, a new era for the Cardinal, and a tough test in Hawaii, making their way over to the continental United States. 6 o'clock CW, FSU, Mike Norvell. We know the pressure there against New Mexico State. 31.5-point favorites are the Seminoles in this matchup here. And this is a game that, you fully anticipate them winning. Central Arkansas in a few weeks, about 3 weeks or so from now, or a month actually from now, a game you'd anticipate them winning. The rest of them, who the hell knows with Florida State this year? And really after this one, who the hell knows for the next couple of weeks? Because following this New Mexico State game where you are favored by more than 4 touchdowns, you have number 19 SMU in a big conference matchup, but at home in Tallahassee next week. And then you're, 10 days from now. And then you'll have Alabama on the road on the 19th, an afternoon game on ABC. So a little tune-up action for Mike Norvell and the Noles. And, as much as I don't want to get into there's must-wins, FSU, this is absolutely a must-win, and one I would feel pretty good about that being the case. And then the capper, UNLV Memphis, 9 o'clock on Fox. Rebs at home, slight favorites. A lot of quarterback uncertainty in this game, and really surprising to kind of see that because of the people that you're talking about. And then, again, maybe it's not so surprising that it's worked out the way that it has. But for UNLV in particular, the name Jackson Arnold should probably ring a bell. And Alex Orji, I'm sure, rings a bell as well. And apparently they still have yet to decide on a starter between those two guys. So last year around this time, I was gearing up to watch Jackson Arnold run all over Baylor in a win in Waco as the head of the Auburn Tigers. And now we're watching him at his new school in UNLV and maybe starting, but maybe Alex Orji starts. I haven't seen an official announcement on that, so remains to be seen. But for Memphis on the other side, Aaron Noland, probably remember him if you follow recruiting. Marcus Stokes, big-time transfer from Division II. And those two still battling out for the starting job. I did see a report earlier today, and you've also got new head coach at Charles Huff coming over from Southern Miss for Memphis. So that's another interesting part about this. But I thought I saw earlier, and I couldn't see it, whether or not it was confirmed by anybody else, that Stokes might have won that battle, but don't quote me on that just yet. So just some interesting quarterback play and decisions going on in that nightcap game, and a game that will also have some ramifications potentially on the G6 conversation that we're having later on in the year, whether it's directly affected by UNLV or Memphis being in the mix, or it's teams that they have played and you're comparing resumes and those types of things. But certainly, if you are UNLV or Memphis and you want any shot whatsoever of playing in the college football playoff as a G6 rep, this is a must-win game from that standpoint. You can't afford to lose any games and to get that opportunity. So big from that standpoint as well. And there you have it, the 8-game schedule coming up this weekend, starting with North Carolina and TCU. Good way to start, and then ending with Memphis and UNLV, which on paper is a really fun way to end things. So super excited about all of that, and we'll be watching at least a portion of probably every single one of these games at some point in time, given how they're separated kickoff time-wise. Probably be able to get eyes on just about every single one of these, and look forward to talking about that when I come back on Monday. So 8 games, and then next week is when we'll be this time next week talking about a massive slate of games on Thursday night as Thursday nights get underway, and just looking ahead, a lot of bought-win games, but there are a couple that are of more interest. For example, Colorado and Georgia Tech next week, 7 days from today, in Atlanta, Georgia at Bobby Dodd Stadium. So we'll have that to talk about next week as well. But I know Smokey will have plenty on this upcoming weekend and everything else on tomorrow's show. But that's getting close to wrapping it up for us here. And I'm trying to think. I've touched on the BYU stuff, the LSU story, the eligibility fight that's ongoing, the upcoming games this weekend. I think that's about it. Rez, do we have a super chat I thought you mentioned earlier? Let's go ahead and check out the super chat and knock that out. And Kim Coulter, 806-499, thank you, sir. Over under 8 wins for your beloved Sooners. I'm going to go, you're right there. That's like why the over-unders are always so tough, is because you're right on that line, and I do think 8's a very good spot to be in to ask this question. I'm going to go over. I'm going to say 9-3 for Oklahoma. I don't anticipate a return to the college football playoff. At least I'm not banking on that is that's a must-have or a must-do. I understood the Brent Venables extension earlier. From their standpoint and kind of the optics of it, I didn't agree with it just because I feel like it was very unnecessary. There's no threat that I'm aware of to go and reward him timing-wise right now. So I would have loved for them to have played that out, although I'm sure conversations have been ongoing and everything. But I think Brent Venables is a good coach. I think last year obviously saved his bacon with what they were able to do, and in so many ways, not sneaking their way in, because it sounds like they didn't, but just things falling away to where they did find themselves kind of surprisingly in the college football playoff at the end of the year. And that great atmosphere for the Alabama game just couldn't get the win. But I think something along those lines is probably in the cards. But 8 wins, I would go slightly over that. But do not bet on my advice, because who the hell actually knows? It's the chaos of college football. Anything short of 8 wins, though, schedule be damned, I would say would be immensely disappointing and would really paint that contract extension announcement in a weird light, because if we're talking about a 7-5 or whatever the bowl game would end up being, Oklahoma team, yeah, that's going to leave me feeling pretty empty. 9-3, yeah, cool. With the schedule in front of them, I could see that and see how that would be not satisfactory, but you wouldn't lose sleep over that. 8-4, I guess it would depend on the circumstances. Less than 8 wins, and I don't give a damn what conference you're playing in. That's not the standard, and coaches don't deserve extensions over that, even though I know the extension was signed before this year's results. But, it would just paint it in a different optic for sure. So, Kim, thank you as always for being so generous and for always being a part of the show. And congratulations on Thomas Castellanos' pickup for your Red Raiders, and can't wait to watch them next week as they get underway. And saw the trailer for the big Paramount series. I didn't have time to see if we could clear that, whether we could play that, so I don't want to do that and get the whole video booted off of YouTube, but I did watch the trailer. They are definitely leaning into being the bad guys. I think that's been clear in the messaging, not just talking about the Sorsby stuff or Cody Campbell or any of that, but I think Joey McGuire's made it pretty clear that, yeah, they're going to embrace being the quote-unquote bad guys. I don't necessarily consider them that. I think they're, as I've commonly used the word, the disruptors, and that does rub people the wrong way, and that's fine. They are fully embracing that. They made that very clear in that trailer, and they're going to have some coverage of what went on. To what extent, I don't know, but if you are interested in such a thing, you like reality sports TV or college football reality TV, then that Texas Tech series trailer did drop earlier today, and that will be on Paramount Plus. I'm sure. I would imagine Kim will be watching that along with millions of other Red Raiders out there. So anything else, Rez, before we dive into the end here? I think we're good. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and I know we don't have the full meal deal as far as everything goes with poll questions and all that. So just throw at me whatever we do have, and I think it might just be a question to close out the show today. And it will at least be a question from the wheel, which has lost some weight here recently. Do you own or have you ever driven an electric car, and do you think gas-powered cars will ever go away? So this is like off the radar of the roulette wheel because we do go off the beaten path sometimes, and that's kind of what's fun about it. No, I've never driven or owned an electric car. I've never given it much thought just because it's not really something that I have cared about too much, to be honest with you. So No, I wouldn't be opposed to checking it out and at least saying that I did that, but I've not really looked into it, and I don't even know how many people I know that have an electric car that I would even be able to check out personally. So the answer to that is no, but more power to those who enjoy them. And do you ever think the gas-powered cars will ever go away? Probably not, because there's way too much money made. I'm trying to be like the most non-political answer, but like the history of America shows that we love our oil, and there's a lot of people that are dependent on oil for making things work, but also for making money. So I don't think we'll ever completely shy away and go all electric or wind powered. No, not this country. I think I will be long gone before that probably ever happens, or I'm around and we've discovered we just don't have nearly as much as we thought, and it's dried up or something like that. But yeah, no, I don't think gas-powered cars in the U.S. are going away. So I'm gonna keep on driving my gas guzzler and seeing where that takes me in the years to come. But that's a pretty easy answer for me there. Anything else, Rez? All right, that's it. So just the wheel today, no trivia. I think Andrew was scared that I was going to go 2-0 all by my lonesome, but that's okay. Maybe next time. I will be hosting on Fridays moving forward the next several weeks because of Smokey's obligations to covering high school football and the Midway Panthers specifically. So I'll be here with you solo on most Fridays. I will be back on Monday after attending a funeral this weekend. Rest in peace to Robert Jolly, a proud prize member of the Jolly family, and somebody who I just saw a couple of weekends ago. He was sitting on the couch next to me. He was battling cancer. It got into the deep stages of it, and things were going downhill. But even sitting there talking to him and seeing that he was struggling, he was still upright. He was still moving around. He's still having a drink. He's still, laughing and doing all that. You kind of notice like a little bit slower. The congestion sounds like it's not quite going away. That's kind of scary. But never thought in that moment that like 3 days later, that was it. And that was the last time I was going to see him. But so fortunate to have known him as a man, and so fortunate to have been around him a lot more than I was growing up these last few years because they had moved closer to home. So just a true joy to spend time with Robert and his poor wife, Tammy, who is now widowed. We'll see them this weekend. We'll see her this weekend, and we'll see him one final time this weekend. So rest in peace, Robert. We love you. I'll be attending to that coming up tomorrow. Smokey will be back in this chair and have plenty to discuss with you, I'm sure involving some new wrinkle with the eligibility cases and some response in regards to wherever this next step of the LSU story is going to take us, and who knows what the hell else, because it's college football and things change in a hurry. So look forward to that tomorrow at 3. Before you go, please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already to just directly support what we do here on the show, just talking college football with you basically 365, every weekday, year-round, we are here with you for a couple of hours. So support the show, give us a thumbs up or that subscribe, and we would certainly appreciate that. But either way, have a great weekend, everybody. I can't wait to rejoin you on Monday and talk some results, some actual results, and I can't wait to sit down on the couch this Saturday and watch how those results unfold. Until next time, have a great night. I'm Craig Smoak. Thanks to Rez behind the scenes as well, Michelangelo Flores. This has been the Smoak Show on 365 Sports.